All right, here we go.
Fashionably late.
Going live now. About 5 minutes late. Sorry, guys, but we should be live now. Those in the chat, let me know if everything is sounding and looking okay. For those new here, we do a Nintendo podcast live streamed every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So, this time we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about that Bloomberg report that's talking about a Switch Pro coming out by the holidays. So we're going to be diving into that. There's a lot of things surrounding that, I think, that has huge implications for the rest of Nintendo's plan for this year and going into next year as well. If you've been watching my channel last week, you may have seen a couple of videos about that stuff already. But then we're also going to be talking about that Sakurai presents and the recent released new DLC character for Smash Brothers, Pyra Mythra. I've been playing with them quite a bit. I've been enjoying them quite a bit. They're pretty darn cool. So we're going to be talking about these characters, but also the Sakurai present itself, I think, is very interesting, or really just kind of how they've been sort of hyping up and celebrating Xenoblade 2. It's getting me to be very curious about what may be happening in the background. And maybe I'm looking too far into things, but there are other things that are surrounding this, so it's not just that. But point is, I'll just be blunt. I think a Monolith Soft game is going to be announced soon. I think it's related to Xenoblade 3. Could be wrong.
Oh,
but I'll talk. There's other details, but we're gonna be talking about that later tonight as well. So that's the plan, guys. But as you may be seeing on screen here, there are two other people. There is Cameron from Gamebird Classic. His channel's linked in the description below.
What's up?
How you doing, man?
Doing all right. Glad to be back. Excited to talk some Nintendo stuff.
Yeah, dude, it's gonna be a good time for sure.
It's gonna be a good show.
Of course, Brandon's here as well. WhataboutNodnarb? His channel's also linked in the description below. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Ready to chat, as always.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. With anything new going on with you guys? I personally have been all over the place because I had family stuff to do. I left the town to do family stuff during my days off, where I normally dedicate to do YouTube stuff. So I was really busy this week, and then, or now I should say, I'm flying in a few hours from now somewhere else. So I'm going on vacation, but I've been busy, basically. So I got a lot going on here, but there's still things I want to talk about. So we're gonna be talking about them tonight. Maybe I'll record a couple little things before I drive out early to the airport in 4 hours, but we'll see.
Trooper, man. You're a Nintendo warrior.
The real Nintendo warrior is that over there, actually.
There you go.
That thing.
That beauty
is cool. It is super cool. Yeah. A friend of a friend had this item, and they were looking to get rid of it, and then a friend of mine got it for me, and now I have it, and now Charmander has a girlfriend. So I got two
Nice.
cardboard cutouts. Now this one's really cool because I'm pretty sure it's from the promotional material for Metroid Prime, the original Metroid Prime, and I think they were having it at a GameStop or something. So this is got a little piece of history right here. I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
But yeah, it's cool. It's pretty darn cool. But let's check in with the chat here before we actually jump into the topics. Let's see here. Seahawks, hello. Alex, good day. Javier Vasquez. Guys, any hopes that Breath of the Wild 2 is getting a trailer reveal sometime in the incoming days, months? So, if you've been paying attention to my channel, I put out a video on Thursday, late Thursday, I want to say. And I made a prediction. Or more than just you know how we do predictions all the time, but I did a prediction coupled with a gamble. So my prediction, I'm so confident in this, or rather, I'm just gonna have fun with it. I'm predicting that Breath of the Wild 2 and a Switch revision will be coming out by the end of the year, meaning that if it comes out in September or October, that will be by the end of the year. If it comes out in November, December, still by the end of the year. Both these things I think will be coming out by the end of the year and probably close together, if not on the very same day. That's my prediction. If I'm wrong, we're still sort of sorting it out in terms of what I will do, but there will be some things that will be very painful for me. So if you have any ideas, for sure, put them out in the chat, put them in the comments, let me know through Twitter or Discord. Share with me different fun ideas we could do if it ends up being the case that Switch Pro or whatever it's going to be called, Switch Plus, or Breath of the Wild 2 don't make it out this year. Some ideas I have in mind, or some friends have suggested to me, is, for example, getting like 900 Korok seeds, golden poops, and scattering them out throughout an entire field, and then my friends would record me, and obviously we would clip it together as I try and acquire 900 Korok seeds.
Oh god.
Yeah. Or another one would be like holding my breath in the wild underwater for over 2 minutes for Breath of the Wild 2. That's another idea that's been thrown around. Another one would be eating dubious food from Breath of the Wild. So, you know, maybe a combination of those
hold
things.
Your breath for 2 minutes?
I have a few months to practice. I don't think we'll actually know what's gonna happen until summertime, probably. So I'll build up to 2 minutes. I
I've
can
done
do
it
it.
before, but
It's not easy.
Pretty rough.
It's not easy.
I feel like eating dubious food is always a winner. Like people just get a kick out of that.
I'm not gonna eat anything that's gonna kill me.
Right. Of course not.
So it ain't gonna be anything moldy, unless it's blue cheese, which is supposed to be that way. But we'll figure it out. So if you guys have any other ideas, let me know. I think someone suggested I should go paragliding, which would be fun.
Dude,
I don't know how that would work in real life, but
There'd be a reward, not a punishment.
unless I make the paraglider myself and I climb a mountain myself,
Oh
and
god.
that would
Yeah,
be
Oh
dangerous.
no.
Please do it with a professional.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, so, yeah, guys, let me know what ideas you have for that. But, yeah, point is, though, I do think that Breath of the Wild 2 will be coming relatively soon. Even if it doesn't make it out this year, AJ Newman already told us that there are plans to detail this game later this year. So, yeah, that's straight from Nintendo. So, yeah, we're getting news later this year. I think it's coming this summertime. I'm thinking this June. I think we're going to get a E3-style Direct around that time. I feel like because we're already seeing the return of the general Nintendo Direct, that sort of suggests that Nintendo's going back to that typical pattern. If you ignore 2020, every other year since 1995, we have gotten major Nintendo news around early summertime. So, excluding the pandemic thing, I feel like it's very reasonable to expect that there will be a summertime Direct presentation, and in there, we will probably get news on Breath of the Wild 2.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think we're definitely getting Breath of the Wild news sooner than later. I think E3 time sounds perfect. I mean, what's going on with E3 right now is a little bit up in the air. There's reports saying that now it's been canceled and they're looking to start their digital event for 2022 and 2023. So there's still some confusion about that. I know we haven't had like a full confirmation, but regardless, I still think by summertime we're going to know exactly what's going on with Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, like Nintendo can still hold a Direct. I think most companies are going to still have some sort of digital presentation. But in terms of E3 themselves, that is a little up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brandon, were you going to add anything?
No, I think Breath of the Wild will. I mean, it's probably what's gonna happen. It'll be like a summer direct. I am curious what's gonna happen exactly with E3. Which companies are actually gonna do presentations through E3 itself, or just gonna do their own thing. I kind of have a feeling that Nintendo will want to work with E3 if they're doing anything in official capacity. Because they are usually like the dominant force of E3. It's a big presentation for them, so it makes sense. But they could just easily do their own thing. But
yeah,
I don't see E3. Like, why even? What's the point of even doing E3 if Nintendo's not there? Like, even if, like, especially because Sony or one of Sony or Microsoft could potentially not come as well. So
yeah,
they should just bring back Space World. Is what they should do.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. But for sure, I think that's probably a good time to expect Breath of the Wild 2 news. We'll talk a little bit more about its release date and stuff later on, because that's sort of, in my opinion, strongly correlates to when we'll see a Switch Pro, which relates to one of the big topics for this video, relating to that Bloomberg report. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's continue on with the chat here. Paul Dune, hello. If Breath of the Wild 2 is Switch Pro exclusive, would you all buy Switch Pro for it? So here's the thing. My answer is yes. But that'd be a terrible, terrible thing, and a lot of people wouldn't buy Breath of the Wild 2. That would be really, really bad. A bad look for Nintendo. I think they would scorn way too many of their fans. And Breath of the Wild 2 would not sell very well. Like, sure, it'll still sell a few million, but it won't sell. Probably wouldn't even sell 10 million. It might not even sell 5 million if they were to do that. So I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think there's like 80+ million people that have a Switch right now, or something around there, right? And by the time Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, let's assume this holiday, may come out later, but let's assume in this holiday, it could be approaching 100 million by that point, right? And if it comes out next year, probably 100 million. Like, how can you ignore that fan base, that viewership? Not viewership, but you understand what I'm saying there. The install base. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. But I will tell you, there are some rumors to kind of couple these other rumors of the Switch Pro report, which from Bloomberg, but basically the other rumors are suggesting that there will be some third-party exclusive games. But third-party is not Nintendo. Nintendo is first-party. So we'll get to that a little bit later, but there's no way that's happening. You guys just
I agree with you 100%. I feel like anything like Zelda or Mario or Pokemon, anything or Mario Kart 9 for instance, any game like that usually reaches such a massive audience of consumers, to just like cut that huge number off by being like, it's just on this brand new model that is just building an install base, just seems crazy, just from a business perspective. When you have 80, like you said, there's 80+ million Switches out there, you'd be telling those 80+ million, sorry guys, Zelda's for the new people, which I'm sure a Switch Pro would sell really well, just like the Switch Lite is selling well, but there's still such a massive install base that I couldn't see Nintendo taking some of their biggest selling games and throwing them on a more exclusive piece of hardware. The type of games I picture being exclusive to like a Switch Pro would be third-party stuff, like maybe like if Doom Eternal was going to be a brand new port, I could see them being like, we're just going to do this for the Switch Pro just because it's going to run the game way better than the base model would,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, look at when Nintendo actually has next generation systems, because this Switch Pro is not a next generation system. This is a mid-gen refresh. Think of it kind of like 3DS to new 3DS, kind of like that, or like DS to DS Lite or DSi. That's what we're sort of seeing right now. Obviously, we don't know for sure yet until Nintendo confirms it, but that's what the reports are suggesting. So, with that, there have been the occasional exclusives, but if we look at when Nintendo has next generation systems, like for example, GameCube and Wii with Twilight Princess, it was a cross-gen release, Twilight Princess. Wii U to Switch, Breath of the Wild, cross-gen release. So worst case scenario, like there's no way we don't see Breath of the Wild 2 on base Switch. That's not happening. So I wouldn't be worried about it at all. Let's see here.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's not happening. No, you guys don't have to worry about that. Javier Vasquez added me. Hello there. Hey man, listen, I got a lot of stuff to do in my house right now, so I won't be able to stay active in the chat during the live stream. Hope you guys have lots of cool things to talk about. Oh, we do. So if you're still listening, I hope you enjoy the show. But thanks for stopping by. Ronnie Fazio, hello there. Super Chris, you have COVID. I am sorry to hear that, buddy. I hope that everything's okay. Stay healthy, eat well, get your rest. If you can exercise to sort of sweat out some of those germs, maybe do that, but make sure you got some supervision there. If you can see a doctor, absolutely do that. But stay healthy, buddy. I hope things work out. I'm sure you'll be fine. Gaming Mini, hello there. Let's see here. Hello Schmidt, good day. Joseph, hello. Rescue Squad. Javisario, hello there. Aaron, hello. Aesop Raw, hello there. Paul Dunn, you should tread water for an hour. I'm assuming if Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't come out this year. Okay. I'll keep
Pretty
that.
tiring.
I'll keep that in mind.
Do you think you could tread water
Yeah.
for an hour?
You'd come out jacked on this. You'd just be like jacked.
That maybe I'll do it anyway, even if I'm right. We'll see. Lee S. I don't know if you've covered this, but have you heard the info about Golden Sun? The trademarks weren't actually renewals. I haven't heard about that. So
Nope.
I'll have to look into that. Brandon, I don't know if you could Google that for me. I haven't heard anything relating to Golden Sun recently.
Okay.
Nintendo Josh, if the report is true, then only third parties will be exclusive that absolutely need the extra power. Based off the rumors, a select few third-party games. Because here's the thing, as we sort of already noted, right, Cameron? There's a huge install base on Switch. So yeah, this Switch Plus. That's what I've been calling Switch Plus since 2019. I'm sticking with it. So whatever this revision is called, when it comes out, like, it may sell a few million at first, but it's not going to have a huge install base. So if a third-party company decides to do this, they're choosing to ignore a far larger install base. And if they're doing that, they're doing it for a reason. It's because it doesn't make sense to them financially to go for that larger install base, because it just, whatever it is they have is just too hard to get running on there. So if they're going to have exclusive for this Switch Pro, it's just because they want to get somewhat of an install base of the Switch, family, and it's just because it can't run on the base Switch. So there'll probably be a few select games, I suppose. I hope not, but maybe like something like some of the latest Resident Evil games, for example, because we've heard that they've tried to get them running on Switch, but we haven't really seen anything announced for that. So maybe they get that on this Switch Pro, and maybe what they can do is they have cloud versions available for the base Switch. Like, I could see something like that happening. Do I want that to happen? No. But if it's a scenario where it's just not possible otherwise, then better that than nothing, right?
Right.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. I took Doom Eternal as like a random example. Obviously, that game runs really well for what it is on the Switch and looks really nice on the Switch, given the power. That was a random example. I was more along the lines of saying like something that wouldn't normally be on the base model. Like you said,
Right.
We can't make this work to where it's acceptable. So we see an opportunity with the Switch Pro or Switch Plus or whatever it's called. In that scenario, it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Ronnie Fazio added me. Pyra Mythra might be the most fun DLC fighters. I think you're right. I think you're right. Pyra Mythra are really good. We'll be talking about that in a bit too. I got a super chat here from Taker610. Thank you very much, Taker. I have no qualms about exclusive games on the Pro. Reason is we're coming up on 5 years when the Pro launches. It's been a generation. Sup, Bird? Little shout out to you there, man. Because you're the bird, Cameron.
Oh, me. Yeah, that is a shout out to me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that either. I was like, bird? Who's bird? Where's the bird? Is there a bird here?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, Taker, because if we were to sort of compare the amount of time we've had with Switch to the amount of time we've had with Wii U, if a Switch Pro does come out somewhere between like August and December of this year, that'd be about 4.5 years, which is how much time the Wii was out on the market before we got the Switch, right? So yeah, I think that it's an interesting point. Like, if there are occasional exclusive third-party games on the Switch Pro, when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there.
I don't have any problems with third parties.
Yeah.
Having exclusives. It's just the first party stuff I don't think is really gonna happen.
Yeah, I really doubt that. I hope that Nintendo doesn't do that. I just don't think it'll be a good look for them. I do plan on getting a Switch Pro, so I don't think it'll impact me, but actually it would, because I probably would have some friends that would complain about it. So it would impact me. But you know what I mean, like in terms of what I play. But the point is, I just don't think that's going to happen. So I wouldn't be worried about that. I think what's going to happen... Actually, you know what? Let's just read the report. Let's go over the details, and then we'll sift through it. So, Bloomberg, as of this is an old report. Oops. Hold on. I mean, I know what they said by heart. I mean, basically, Bloomberg is reporting that this summer they will start manufacturing Samsung OLED
OLED.
rigid
Just call it OLED.
OLED
Just call it
screens.
OLED.
OLED screens, and I think it's the rigid kind. Basically, they're not as expensive as like the top tier phones, but it's still a higher quality screen than we have with the Switch currently. It'll have better contrast, potentially better response time, still 720p. But basically, the advantages of this is that while it may still have the same resolution as the current Switch models right for the screens, the colors will be better. Still, the image will be an improvement over what we have on the base Switch, and it'll be more efficient in terms of power consumption. So this will suggest better battery life, and the fact that it's at 720p also bodes well for battery life as well. But the other interesting thing that they've pointed out is that this will also have 4K capabilities in docked mode. So that's exciting. And they mentioned that in relation to gaming, I believe, as well. So not just like Netflix and stuff, which the Switch doesn't even have. There's a couple streaming apps like Funimation and Hulu, but for the most part, the clear focus of the Switch is gaming. So 4K capabilities and an improved screen and better power consumption. So it's gonna be a better system in terms of portability, but it's also gonna be a better system in terms of visual fidelity when it's docked into the television. So it still seems like a pretty nice package to me. And supposedly they'll start manufacturing screens this summer, which to me suggests that they probably will be ready for a holiday release. And they do imply that in the report that they're trying to get this out by the holidays to compete with both Sony and Microsoft in their new systems. So that's the basic report that happened last week. I think to me it makes sense. We've been getting these different reports for a while, and this most latest one, is kind of further sort of information to kind of help give us a bit more confidence that this is happening. Especially this late into the game, it does seem like it's likely. So I think it's happening. There's a whole bunch of we've been talking about this for a while already, but I think it's a big deal. So it's gonna be a cool system that I think will be. We're going to be able to play games at a higher resolution, and we'll also have a system that's going to last longer away from the dock. And to me, that's a pretty nice little package right there. It's something that I'm pretty excited about. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think it's going to be a nice improvement, or not really worth it for you guys? And if, regardless of whether it's worth it for you guys, do you think it's actually happening?
I mean, there's not that much information as to whether it will be worth it. A 720p screen would still be nice in the handheld, just because there's so many games that hit way below that on handheld, some of them even below like 480p. So most games would need a lot more power just to get it up to native resolution. But there are some games that actually hit 720p, like Smash and stuff, that I would like to see bumped up to 1080, but what are you gonna do?
I think this report makes a lot of sense. This is kind of falls in line with the expectations that I've had for what a Switch Pro could be, and I know you guys as well. We've talked about the Switch Pro before on your podcast. The 720p screen thing, I think, is perfectly fine. I know there's some people kind of up in arms, bummed out about it not being 1080p, and I think it would be awesome to have a 1080p screen, but at the same time, like you said, Brandon, there's a lot of games that are on the Switch that aren't even hitting that 720p threshold. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 runs at a really low resolution in handheld mode. So if the little bit of a boost that this Switch Pro model gets brings that game, like a game like that, up to 720p, maybe 60 frames per second in handheld mode, that's going to look beautiful. There's not a lot of real estate there. 1080p also is going to drain more battery than 720p. I don't know. I think keeping the screen at 720p is the smart decision at keeping the better battery life, keeping those costs down as well, and let the docked gameplay be more of a core experience and more of a exclusive experience with the 4K enhancement. I think that is just smart to me.
And this report saying this is the one that says they're gonna have a 7-inch screen, right?
Yes,
Is that a
that is
another
another
thing
little
thing?
fact there. That 7-inch screen. The
That'd be nice.
base Switch, I don't have.
I think the base Switch is like barely over 6.
6.2.
Like barely over 7.
6.2.
So it's essentially just removing most of the bezel.
Yeah. So imagine like you only see like a little sliver of black around this right here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Be nice.
Show that off.
Just removing that bezel and enlarging the screen is going to make the system look so much more sleek too. The black bezel doesn't look very nice in my opinion. I think that's going to make it look a lot more premium aesthetically. But one thing I want to mention that it's not in this report, and I know I've predicted it here on your channel in the past and on my channel a few times, but I really want pro cons. I know it's not anywhere in this report, but Nintendo has a major problem with Joy-Con drift that, they obviously haven't resolved. I'm sure they're sick of the lawsuits. They're sick of people sending in their Joy-Cons for repair. And this is a great opportunity for them to introduce brand new Joy-Cons, introduce Pro Cons that are more comfortable, a little bit more ergonomic. And the beautiful thing about it is, according to this report, the Switch Pro would be using the same housing and kind of body as the current model. So that means they're probably going to remove the bezel to enlarge the screen, which means the Joy-Cons would work on either console. So if they did release Pro Cons, you'd be able to use those on your original Switch as well. So if you don't want to upgrade, but you like the new Joy-Cons, you could just buy those separately. It's kind of a win-win situation for Nintendo and for customers, in my opinion. So I'm really hoping we get something like that.
Yeah. I like the name of Pro Cons. It kind of rolls off the tongue. I don't think Switch Pro, we call it Switch Pro, right? But I understand what you're thinking though, right? So. I'm not saying you're saying it'll be called Pro Cons necessarily, but the idea of improved Joy-Cons, right? I guess my question is, for this current generation, how much can they change about the Joy-Cons where it'll still make sense for this current generation? For example, I feel like it'd be weird to add analog triggers when a lot of games aren't built for analog triggers already, as much as I'd like to see that. Now, it would be nice to get Joy-Cons that have, for example, an audio jack, or a Pro controller with an audio jack as well, so that's one improvement I think they can put in there that wouldn't really get in the way of just, the current setup of the games on Switch. And obviously, analog sticks that don't drift or are less susceptible to building up a drifting issue. And that would be fine. I would love that. I'm not sure what else they would do, though. Is there anything else that you guys think that they could kind of improve upon with the Joy-Cons to the point where it'll make sense for current Switch, right? Because there's obviously things they can improve upon, but they have to make it so it still works with the current Switch and worry about the massive improvements for later on.
I think they wait till next gen to really improve the controllers. They might add something like just fixing the joysticks, but or adding the headphone jack, but I don't see them doing things like, I think next gen they'll probably improve the HD rumble, because the stuff that Sony's using in their PS5 is actually a bit better, so they might find something that's similar to that, or even better than that, so they might go hard on that aspect.
I don't think it's I think if they do this, what I would like personally is not this, really dramatic change in the controller. Really just get rid of the Joy-Con drift, make it a little bit more comfortable to hold, a little bit more ergonomic, and like you said, like throw in a headphone jack in there. And to me, that's a more premium Joy-Con. It's subtle changes, but
they can't market that it doesn't have Joy-Con drift, right? Like they can't be like
no, they can't.
Yeah, that's my thinking, like how they market this.
Right, so like I feel like it makes more sense for it to be a quiet revision. However, to your point about Joy-Cons being more ergonomic, I will tell you that for me, like holding this for an extended period of time, I do kind of get some discomfort. I mean, there's a whole bunch of accessories out there for like different grips.
I got one.
But to have Joy-Cons with their own built-in grips, I don't think is too crazy. Like, I guess they're thinking with the initial design for the Switch is that they wanted it to be kind of flat, right? If you kind of redesign the Joy-Cons to have a bit more of a grip to it, where it feels more comfortable, you kind of lose the straightness of the system, right? Or that flatness there. It would still fit into the dock, right? Because where the dock sort of meets up, it cuts off here, so you can still have a grip here, and it would still fit. So it's kind of interesting how they might choose to design that.
If they're a little more ergonomic and they have a little bit more shape to the back instead of being straight, that's where they could fit in the headphone jack, because I don't really think there's space without changing the shape or the internal design.
Yeah. It's tough. Because I would like that, but again, like, if it has that, then all the Switch cases currently, they still fit with it, you know? I like your point, Brandon, that would give it a little bit more space in terms of, like, putting other things that are like an audio jack. Because that is also part of the problem. Like, there's a lot of technology that's like, shoved inside of here, right? Like, you have HD Rumble, you have an IR camera, you have... the other one has NFC technology, right? And obviously you have all the controls themselves. You have this built-in piece so it can plug into the Switch and sync with the system, but also charge at the same time. And then obviously there are shoulder buttons built into the sides as well. Like there's a lot of stuff in here. It's pretty crazy how much they actually fit into these tiny little things. But again, yeah, there are still things I can improve upon, because I do wish they're a little bit more ergonomic, and I do wish they're a bit more sturdy. And also an audio jack. Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like it's more likely to get more of a quiet revision, but if we get...
They could make it feel more premium with, like, higher quality plastics and stuff.
Yeah. Premium build quality. Yeah. They could... I could see that, though, right? I could see them coming out with this system and saying, oh, it now it comes with... Joy-Cons is more of a premium build quality to them, so they're more comfortable in the hands, right? And they also may say that, you know, we've repurposed the structure of the Joy-Cons. Like, they might do something about the wording that might imply that it's less, you know, like, less prone to
like
Joy-Con.
break.
Yeah, without literally saying no Joy-Con drift. Like, I think that's possible, that wording will have to be very kind of careful with.
I think any form of like a new branding for them is going to give people hope that they've eliminated, like they wouldn't have to say it. People would instinctively be like, oh, this is a new version of the Joy-Cons. I wonder if these have Joy-Con drift. And then, you know, obviously you're waiting for the reports. No reports come in because they fixed it. People are talking about that. Whereas if it was just a quiet revision and they don't do any sort of rebranding, you would never know. I mean, it would be hard to kind of like associate buying a new Switch with eliminated Joy-Con drift. But if it wasn't called Pro-Cons, there's so many cool names. I think you talked about in one of your videos how it might be called the Switch Plus. They could call them Joy-Con Plus. New and improved, a little bit more ergonomic, headphone jack, whatever. No more Joy-Con drift. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't think it's far-fetched.
No, it's not. It's not far-fetched. It's just you wonder how they do it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. We'll see what they do there. But let's kind of continue on with this thinking, though, that we're getting this Switch revision, because you all seem to agree that this is happening. Is there?
Oh yeah.
Is there any doubt?
About the Switch Plus or this particular
Switch Plus?
Oh yeah, I don't doubt.
I have zero doubt. I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if we don't get an announcement for it this year. Like, that'll be the shocker for me. I think we're gonna get an announcement for this in like late summer. I think we'll probably see this in September, maybe August, with like a launch that's 2 to 3 months later is what I'm expecting.
I see where you're coming at with that. I'm not sure, because I feel like when we look at the February Nintendo Direct, right, there was a lot that they didn't announce, because you have this window of August to February where we don't know what's kind of, well, actually, just to say August to December. We don't know what's coming out during this period, save for Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. We have no idea what's coming out during this period. But they were talking about games for 2022 already. Like, we have 3 games we know for 2022 already. Big ones. Splatoon 3, Triangle Strategy, and Pokemon Legends Arceus. And Pokemon Legends Arceus is early 2022, by the way. I believe that, to me, that suggests March 2022. Actually. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. Point is that we have this window that we don't know about what's going on there, right? So it makes me wonder, why did that happen? When you consider this Bloomberg report and how it's sort of suggesting that we're getting these revisions by the holidays, so potentially even beforehand, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like November. It could be October or September, right? It could release by then. It makes me wonder that maybe the reason why we didn't see other games announced for later into the year is because they're saving them for another presentation. And maybe during this presentation, we already have the knowledge of this Switch that has 4K capabilities, right? Like, what if they want to show off Breath of the Wild 2 in 4K? What if they want to show off a Metroid Prime Trilogy in 4K? You know, things like that that would make people want to buy the system more. Maybe they were kind of saving those types of reveals for that, once this is already a known quantity. Now, the problem with that thinking, though, is that that would mean that we would learn about this Switch Pro around the same time as, I guess, June, if we assume that we are getting an E3 style direct around then, right? Which at that point it makes you kind of wonder, like, if that's the case, do we see a Switch Pro like late summer or like early fall, you know? But there's obviously different ways they can go about doing this. There may not even be a need to announce a Switch Pro then. They may not even talk about 4K games during this supposed E3 style direct, right? And they just sort of reveal the system and say, oh yeah, you can do 4K. Check it out on our website or something. And you could see like 4K comparisons on a website or something like that. And then it just comes out a couple months later. They can maybe do that. It's hard to say how exactly they're going to market this.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to remember what they did for like the new 3DS. They definitely did a lot of like, thinking back in the trailers, a lot of them were like comparisons between like for loading speeds and for the 3D and things like that. Like a lot of it was like comparing. So they'll probably do some comparisons for graphics, I'd assume, as well.
Just a little prediction. This is something I could see them doing. You know, it's, with like all predictions, it's subject to be wrong. But I don't see them showing off the Switch Pro or Switch Plus at E3, like at that time in June. I feel like if E3 is happening, if there's some big digital event, they're going to focus on the software. And I definitely think we'll see Breath of the Wild there. But what I could see them doing is doing a Breath of the Wild trailer and then like holiday 2021. And then like late summer, maybe September, they do a special direct that introduces the Switch Pro, goes over all the new features, and then at the end of that, one more thing, and it's the final kind of like release date trailer for Breath of the Wild. And it, you know, talks about, you know, it shows it off, play this game in 4K, launches November, yada yada.
Okay. Well, actually, I mean, if we assume that Nintendo returns to like their typical sort of pattern, right? You usually get somewhere between January and March some sort of presentation, then summertime E3 Direct, and then September there's a big Direct, right? Like conceivably, you could get a lot of the reveals and rough dates for the 2021 games, including Breath of the Wild 2. But to your point, maybe close to September, we get like that Switch Pro Direct or whatever, and then we get solid dates for Breath of the Wild 2 and other games that will be pushing this system.
Yeah, Nintendo's been really good about excluding some of those late announcements that they made that you mentioned, like Splatoon 3 and some of the other games. They've been really good about sticking to that, announcing a game and then having the release date like shortly after, within 2 to 3 months. So I could see them giving that official release date for Breath of the Wild just 2 to 3 months before it's ready to be on shelves. And what better way to pair it than with new hardware? I still firmly believe that is the best piece of software to launch a kind of enhanced version of their current console.
That's what I sort of wanted to transition to, because like I said earlier, because of the Switch revision, I now firmly believe that Breath of the Wild 2 is being positioned as the big holiday game to push this 4K capable Switch. It kind of all makes sense, really, in my opinion. Obviously, we don't know what actually happened. It's just a prediction. Could be wrong. But that is what I'm sort of thinking now, because it is probably the game that is going to push the system more than any other that Nintendo is preparing, aside from maybe Metroid Prime 4, but that's not coming out this year. We don't even know about Prime Trilogy yet, or the Metroid, the 2D Metroid game. I think we're going to get those first before we even get Metroid Prime 4. So in other words, because of that, Prime 4 is probably far off, you know? Like, best case scenario, Prime 4 probably comes out like holiday 2022, and even that I feel like isn't a sure bet at all. Yeah. So you gotta think that if they're gonna have any sort of big, impressive game to show off for this Switch system, it's gonna be Breath of the Wild 2. And if you look at how Nintendo has handled their different launches of systems or pieces of hardware, usually they have Zelda paired alongside of it. If we go back to 2019, in September, same day, the Switch Lite came out alongside the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake. We go back to 2017, Breath of the Wild, the Nintendo Switch, right? We go back to 2015, the new 3DS, Majora's Mask 3D. So there is a history there. Actually, if we go even further back, the Wii and Twilight Princess. And, like, Nintendo has seen that some of their most successful systems usually start off with a really strong launch with a Zelda release. The Wii U didn't have one. So what happened? Bombed. You know? So I think Nintendo knows that they want to push a system with a big new Zelda game.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, let's be honest. Like, what games are better, like, graphically speaking, than even like on the Switch currently? Breath of the Wild. Like, there's not
which
many.
is a Wii U game.
Yeah, there's not many that compete super well with that.
No.
So Breath of the Wild 2 is already looking like it's gonna look a lot better, and it's probably gonna be one of the best looking games on the Switch just in general.
Yeah.
So it's one of the best, I think, to showcase what the next gen Switch can do.
Right, now it's possible there's other games we don't know
Switch
about.
Plus, not next gen.
Yeah, I understand. But there could be games that we don't know about that may come out and support this system. But what we know so far, or we have an idea about so far, doesn't really suggest it would be that kind of game. So, for example, I want to talk about this Pokemon situation. So, two things. One, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. If you guys have seen the trailer, it's a nice little thing, but it's a little thing. It's Game Freak is outsourcing for the first time in mainline Pokemon release, and from what we can see of the trailer, it's a very conservative sort of remake kind of game. It basically, I mean, it's like Link's Awakening, but even less graphically appealing than that, you know? So
yeah, very basic.
This looked to me, it looked like more of an HD remaster than a remake. Obviously, it is a remake because they've kind of chibied it and changed a little bit of it. But it does look kind of like an HD version. Because the DS
already had some 3D elements to it, you know.
Yes.
Like it's. Yep. Yeah. Because it is entirely still the same game, just with a few more polygons in HD and different textures. Yep. Because like the chibi style sort of still kind of matches that look a little bit of what they initially had. Because the older Pokemon games, the player models were sort of chibi-fied, like they kind of always were like that, except back in the day when it wasn't in 3D, maybe people didn't associate it as chibi, but the character models were sort of squished down, so he's kind of like cube-ish like shapes when you were exploring the world. So point is though, is that that's a late 2021 game. Usually Pokemon games come out around November. There's no way that's going to be the game Nintendo's going to be like, hey, this new 4K capable Switch, play it with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the best looking game on Switch. No, that's not what they're gonna do. It's just to be clear, I am not trying to speak ill of Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. I know it definitely sounds that way. My point is simply that I would describe this as a conservative remaster. It's not a graphical showcase, right? Pokemon Legends Arceus probably is also, I wouldn't actually call a graphical showcase for the system at all, but it is impressive for what Game Freak is doing. And what's interesting about that is that, as I've talked about in a few videos recently, This game's coming out late 2022. Early 2022. They've already told us this. If you look at how Pokemon Company Game Freak have always like announced and released their games, this is the longest window we've ever seen in terms of being told about a game being in development and then it coming out. Like, this is looking to be a year out. That's already the largest window we've ever seen. But considering how we've seen this pattern, or somewhat of a pattern, of Nintendo releasing big games or having big games to release around the end of the fiscal year, to me, I think this game is coming out March 2022. Like, that early 2022 to me screams March 2022. And if that's the fiscal year ending game, then where does that leave Breath of the Wild 2? Because if it either has to come out like afterwards or like be the holiday game for this year. I don't think they can position it as an April or February game. Like, they theoretically could, don't get me wrong. But usually, two big releases like that don't come out right next to each other early in the year. We might see something like that towards the holidays, like October, November, December, right? Like, that could maybe happen. And of course, we've seen in previous years where multiple published Nintendo games come out in the same month. But when it's two 10+ million selling games, you don't see them come out right next to each other unless it's the holidays. Do you guys kind of agree with my point there, or do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There's
like,
not usually... There might be like one big game in like the springtime, but usually not like two massive hitters. No.
Yeah. So to me, that all just sort of suggests either Breath of the Wild 2 comes out after the fiscal year or before that, right? And by more than a month of a window. And if we consider the idea of it coming out afterwards, that's so long. At that point, Breath of the Wild 2 will have a longer development cycle than Breath of the Wild itself. This is a sequel, like, building off of the base game, like that doesn't, to me, that doesn't compute.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying forever now that, like, in sticking to my guns, that I think Breath of the Wild 2 is gonna launch by the holiday time of this year. I honestly feel like the only reason why we wouldn't be getting it by holiday time is if there was an internal delay. Meaning they've been planning for it to launch this holiday all year long, but because of some internal delay, whether it's pandemic related, we know that the pandemic had a very strong impact on Nintendo, especially last year.
We've seen it kind of surge back and forth too,
yeah,
right? Like, so it's still an ongoing issue.
Yeah. We just watched that presentation with Sakurai where he was, filmed from home saying, like, I'm out of my office. Japan's in lockdown right now. So that's taking a toll on the development and, the standards that Nintendo has with their new Zelda games, that Eiji Aonuma has for the sequel to Breath of the Wild. They've got big shoes to fill to make this game match the love and success of the first game and hopefully exceed it. So I think that if it's not this year, it's because of delays as opposed to it was planned to be a 2022 game.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll say that I think March 2022 for Breath of the Wild 2 makes sense. Like, it does. But the thing is because they've recently confirmed that Pokemon Legends Arceus is an early 2022 game, I'm now like, okay, they know something. Like, I don't think they would position that game for that period if if they already knew that Breath of the Wild 2 was coming around then. I don't see that. I could be mistaken, obviously. Like, maybe we do see a situation where we see Pokemon Legends Arceus come out, like, February, and then Breath of the Wild 2 comes out March. Could they get away with it? They probably could get away with it too. Like, I'm saying that we've never seen Nintendo do it before, but they could get away with that. Like, I don't think they will, but that could conceivably happen, right? I just don't. That's just not what I think is going to happen, though. I think, this Pokemon game is a fiscal year ending game, and Breath of the Wild 2 is a holiday game with a Switch Pro. That's just what makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, especially too, since, like, Pokemon Legends is still kind of an unknown quantity. We don't really know the full scope of it.
True.
All the features and stuff like that. But based on how it looks, I'm assuming, and I'm sure you guys are both assuming too, that this is going to be a big Pokemon adventure. The world looked massive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, like you said, packing two huge open world games back to back, it's
also very Zelda-esque. That's the other problem with it.
Right.
It's clearly inspired by Breath of the Wild. So it's like, hey, here's a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and then here's a Pokemon version of Breath of the Wild. Like, there's got to be some space. There's just got to be some space. So yeah, I think either Breath of the Wild 2 is having an incredibly long development cycle that goes beyond Breath of the Wild, or it's comparable to it, and that could be partially attributed to the pandemic for sure, or the game is ready in 4 years, which is a long time already for a sequel. That's what I think. I mean, that's what I think is happening, but of course we'll see there. But I want to address a few other things though, because there are other potential games that could be coming out around the holiday time that Nintendo could maybe use to sort of market with a Switch Pro Plus kind of system, right? We've seen rumors of a Mario Party game coming, which I wouldn't qualify as a good game to be marketed with that. So I could see it maybe coming up beforehand, or it's just not really relevant to it. But other games that come to mind from credible rumors, is a new Donkey Kong game. But some of the rumors have suggested this new Donkey Kong game will be more of the side-scrolling variant. Now, we don't know that for sure. Supposedly, the Mario Odyssey team is developing this Donkey Kong game. Now, if that's the case, it does make me wonder, is this game meant to be more of a stopgap for them while they sort of reposition themselves and gear up for the next big 3D Mario, maybe save that for like their next generation system? Or is this a big deal in and of itself and it's more than just a side-scroller? So it's hard to say because we don't have the full details on it. It may not even be real, right? It could just be leak bait or something. But I'm of the frame of mind, based off the sources and other extenuating circumstances, that there is a Donkey Kong game coming. So that is something that could be coming out this year, and that could be a nice, impressive looking game for sure. But if it's a side scroller, how much of that is it actually going to be a showcase for a 4K capable system? Which brings me to the other big rumor game to come out for this year, and that is the Mercury Steam developed Metroid game that's supposedly been in the works the last few years. That's going to be an awesome thing. Same thing to Donkey Kong. Like, I'm super excited for a 2D Donkey Kong game, and I'm super excited for 2D Metroid. Two super awesome things that I'm going to play and put as many hours as I can into them. They're some of my favorite franchises. But the point I'm making here isn't about quality, it's about how this markets a Switch Pro, right? So it just kind of, if these rumors are true, and they're coming from the same people that told us about Pikmin 3 Deluxe and 3D All-Stars and 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, like all of those games that came out all throughout 2020, we knew about them months in advance. So, I believe these sources here. These aren't the kind of games that you would use to sort of push a 4K system. So while they may be coming, I don't think you're going to need something else, which sort of strengthens the argument for Breath of the Wild 2, but maybe there's something else that Nintendo has ready. One other game that's been in development since 2017 is Bayonetta 3. That could be something Nintendo could put out there that I think would definitely be the kind of game that would fit the kind of marketing Nintendo may want for this system.
Right. Yeah, Bayonetta 3 seems like a perfect candidate to show off the power of a revised Switch console. But I think when I think of kind of enhanced Switch, the titles that kind of come to mind for me, if I was running the show and I wanted to launch software next to it, is obviously Zelda, a brand new like mainline kind of open world Mario, like a Mario Odyssey 2, a Smash Brothers, which I don't think we're getting a new Mario this year. Obviously we're not getting a new Smash Brothers game. And then
just you wait. The DLC is finishing before the end of the year. They're like,
I think we're gonna get more DLC. I don't think the Fighter's Pass is done. I think they're taking this game to the moon. But the other one is Mario Kart 9. So Zelda and Mario Kart 9, I think, are the two big ones left that would really push. But I don't think Mario Kart 9 is coming out this year. So I think it's going to be Zelda. I think we're going to be getting a Mario Kart 9 sooner than people think. I could see it being a 2022 game or a 2023 game.
I think probably 2023, maybe. Yeah, yep. I could see that if there's like a next generation Switch that comes out then.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point,
That's
they'll launch it on the next gen Switch.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean, it's hard because
that's
Mario.
what I think. Maybe a cross-gen release, but
Yeah, it's hard because Mario Kart 8 is selling so well, but that one comes to mind just because it's an insane seller. Like, a game like Mario Kart will sell new hardware.
right. And I agree with you on that. Like, even though there's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and it's currently still the best-selling game on Switch with 30+ million, it's very strong title, and it's evergreen, so it's going to continue to sell. So there isn't necessarily a need for it, especially because we also got a second Mario Kart game on Switch just last year with Mario Kart Live Circuit. So, there isn't necessarily a need for it, but there is still that room because we haven't had a brand new ground-up Mario Kart game since 2014, technically. We're in 2021. So, there's kind of arguments on both sides, and there are some rumors suggesting it. But personally, what I'm thinking, and based off different people I've heard from and stuff, like I feel like that whatever rumors that was for Mario Kart 9, that may have been more of a confusion over what Live Circuit was.
Sure.
So, I'm not necessarily sure we're getting Mario Kart 9. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm simply saying that I'm not like super confident about it, I feel like it's a much more likely bet that we'll see this Donkey Kong game and this Metroid game this year than Mario Kart 9. But I'll tell you this, right? We know for a fact that the team that made Mario Kart 8 initially and also made ARMS that came out in 2017, they haven't come out with a major game since ARMS in 2017. They've done DLC for ARMS. That's it. So, what have they been working on? It could be Mario Kart 9, for sure. But it also could be something else. I personally would prefer something else. Although I would love to get some new Mario Kart tracks. I mean, I'm gonna be real. I want more. I want new tracks. But they have something in the works, and maybe Mario Kart 9, maybe something else that could conceivably be a game. Whatever it is that team has been working on, they could put out a big, massive, awesome game that could be the kind of game that would go over well with marketing this Switch revision.
Yeah, and I think, Mario Kart 8 is one of the better looking games in the Wii U, and I think a Mario Kart 9 built from the ground up for the Switch, especially releasing alongside a Switch Plus at like 4K 60 FPS, would look really good. Like, I think they could make it look a lot better than Mario Kart 8, even though Mario Kart 8 looks amazing already. And I think it could be something that actually pushes some graphical boundaries as well as obviously the sales will be great.
Yeah, Mario Kart 8 was that game where you're like, how is this a Wii U game? It's so good looking.
It was the game that I was like, finally, we have a next generation looking game. Like,
right?
Wii was supposed to be an HD system. It was Nintendo's first HD system, and the games we got for Wii U just weren't like, man, this is what we kind of were waiting for all those years on the Wii, waiting for HD Nintendo games until Mario Kart 8, and that was that moment because it looked amazing.
It looked comparable to games you'd expect on the competition that were, going for that more powerful and higher graphical fidelity. So, like you said, Brandon, Mario Kart 9 would be gorgeous.
Don't you think it's kind of funny though that like if we go before Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart was never known as like the graphical showcase for Nintendo systems. Like I think Mario Kart DS was impressive for the system, right? But Mario Kart 7 looked pretty good too, but like overall Mario Kart was never really considered like that super. It was never like the showcase for the system, right? You look at Mario Kart 64, like the models aren't even 3D,
No.
Like it's fun, it's great. But you understand my point. Double Dash is also not really a graphical showcase for the GameCube either.
Right.
There's just a history of Mario Kart not always really being that. But Mario Kart 8, it's like, whoa, this is the best looking game on Wii U until, of course, Breath of the Wild. But Xenoblade X, I think, also deserves a nod in that direction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mario Kart 8 was like that first game that we're like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for.
Beautiful.
And it's still like easily top 5 best looking Wii U games.
Yeah. If I were Nintendo, I personally would save Mario Kart 9 for the launch of the Switch successor. Like I just can't think of a better
it is
way.
the launch though. We get it
like the launch title. and either and also have like bundles. You could buy it separately or have limited Mario Kart bundles with like the cool, checkerboard flag. If it was a Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be, it just seems like a home run, kind of, like Breath of the Wild, but with the Switch.
Yeah. There's actually I had another super chat here from Taker that I didn't get to. Thank you very much, Taker. Taker said Vita had an OLED. I'll just say OLED now. 540p, never owned one, but had PSP. Yeah, the PSP had the Vita had a nice screen.
They had an OLED on the original model, and they took it off later to lower the price of it.
Because it was expensive.
At the time. But it was also a long time ago.
Yeah.
OLEDs are a lot more common. I mean, they've been using OLEDs in phones for a while now.
I mean, it's been years since then, right? Yeah, things have changed. Let's see here. Drone Present adding, maybe with Pokemon Legends Arceus about the Switch Pro. I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying that Pokemon Legends Arceus would be like a good game to market the Switch Pro?
Definitely would. But
it
doesn't seem like it's coming out at the right time.
Well, unless Switch Pro doesn't make it out this year, but based on the Bloomberg report, it is. So I don't know. I don't feel like Pokemon Legends Arceus is actually a graphical showcase kind of game. Like, for Pokemon standards, it is, but it really isn't that visually impressive.
I think
if it didn't have Pokemon in it, I could see it as an indie game.
Yeah, I think if they polish it up, they could be, but I don't know if they will. It will at least look very nice, and if it isn't running in 4K, it will look very, very clean.
Yeah,
it will look great.
Yeah, it's gonna. Don't misconstrue what I'm trying to say there. Like, this system's gonna make games on the Switch across the board look and run better. So yeah, it's gonna be nice to have it on there. But to me, it doesn't strike me as the kind of game that will be that kind of game you want to use to like hardcore market this. I mean, you could say, hey, open world Pokemon in 4K. Like, that is a nice sort of slogan there. 4K open world Pokemon game, right? So, I mean, you could market it, but it isn't. Pokemon Legends Arceus doesn't look anywhere near as good as Breath of the Wild, and that game came out in 2017. It's not even close. Right. But still, for Pokemon, it's a big step.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm not sure anything Pokemon is like the right choice to launch a more exclusive, more premium console.
Yeah.
Game Freak tends to focus on like the portability aspect of it. So like, obviously we launched the Switch Lite.
There could be a variant of that. They could have a variation, like a Pokemon branded version of it. And because if you look at the 3DS, the 3DS, new 3DS, and the 3DS XL all had Pokemon variants. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's a stretch. But yeah, not as like the main one. Yeah. Moving on with the chat here. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Cameron. Was there anything else you were going to sort of add there?
No, I was just going to say, like, there's definitely the hardcore fan base of Pokemon fans who are going to be like, yes, Pokemon in 4K, I'm on it. But Pokemon also extends to a big casual audience as well as a younger audience, and it just seems like Game Freak has always wanted to really emphasize that portability. So the Switch Lite seems more geared towards marketing of Pokemon than a Switch Plus or Switch Pro. Not that they wouldn't do a cool bundle with a themed variant, which obviously that would be awesome for Pokemon. Just like you said, as that like launch, like this is the game to play the Switch Pro with. I just don't see it.
Yeah. I could see a situation where they have like kind of like a Switch Lite variant and also a Switch Plus variant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Drone Present, the controller added me. I think that with the future release of Splatoon 3 on Switch, I think there's a better chance that Mario Kart 9 will be released on Switch 2. What? I'm trying to think. Like, what about Splatoon 3? Like, Splatoon.
Repeat the question.
Okay. Drone President the Controller said, I think that with the future release of Splatoon 3 on Switch, I think there is a better chance that Mario Kart 9 will be released on Switch too. TOO.
Maybe because they're both big, huge multiplayer games for Nintendo, but I mean, Mario Kart Deluxe and Splatoon 2 came out the same year, so it's not like they space them out.
Yeah, I mean, there was like a 4-month window between them, so
Yeah.
or even less. I feel like though 2017, Nintendo kind of front-loaded themselves. That they left the Wii U to die, and they had most of their major projects sort of come out in 2017, and they got out a lot of these evergreen games. So that way they were available immediately. So the kind of games people would get immediately for a system, like, okay, we're going to get the Splatoon, we'll get the Mario Kart, there they are. They wanted them there early on. So it kind of makes sense to have all these big games come out in 2017. But now that those games are already out there and available, I'm not sure I think Nintendo would do it the same way again. I don't think we would go into 2022 and then Splatoon 3 comes out and Mario Kart 9 comes out within 3 or 4 months of it. I feel like it'd be treated a little differently. However, to your point though, with this new Switch that we're seeing coming out, could be a bit of a relaunch for the Switch here. It could be kind of like, a mid-gen refresh, but they might sort of pseudo-market it as a next-generation system or just like the next step for it, right? And they may want to have a lot of big games come out to kind of, push this thinking here. So maybe they do get out a new Mario Kart game and this new Splatoon game around the same time in 2022. So, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to, kind of make the distinction that in 2017, Nintendo front-loaded to get everything out there available for everyone who's buying a Switch.
Right.
But there's a chance they might get a lot more big games like that out to kind of push this new Switch for that mid-gen refresh. So we'll see.
I think that makes sense. I'm surprised Splatoon 3 isn't being safe for that purpose. I don't know.
Well,
What's going on with that?
I mean, it's if they're announcing it now, I feel like it's probably a summer 2022 game, so it comes out within 6-8 months of the launch of the Switch Pro. So it comes out like November. It's coming out, but I would say it's pretty likely we're going to see Splatoon 3 within a year of the Switch Plus, right? So
True.
It's still going to make it out for
that.
launch window or something.
And it is looking to be a step up graphically from the original, or from Splatoon 2. So could benefit from a Switch Pro.
Yeah.
Plus or whatever.
Not to mention, we have seen that Nintendo has updated they're updating their online servers too. So it does seem like in general they are kind of gearing up for their next generation, even though it's not like
Switch Plus with better Wi-Fi, please.
Maybe.
Ethernet on the dock.
Yeah, it'd be
please.
nice if you could get a Wi-Fi connection that's better than 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's freaking horrible.
It's quite a bit of a bottleneck there.
I get 300 on my PC, and then right next to it, I get 30 on my Switch. And I'm like, gosh darn it.
Oh,
This is the worst.
Man. Joshua Ayers just brought up something that I think is worth noting here. Oh, Birdman also brought up as well. Several people are bringing it up. Pikmin 4.
Pikmin 4.
Yeah, Pikmin 4. That
Game
is the
we've been
kind of
talking about
game.
Since 2015.
Right, but that is the kind of game that will look great for 4K on a 4K capable system.
It would.
So it would,
especially if it's Unreal Engine 4 or something.
Yeah, what if the reason we haven't seen Pikmin 4 is because Nintendo was like, hey, this is the ideal game to get out in 4K, because it's not even just the fact that it's visually stunning, it's that there's a lot of little things happening, a lot of smaller details that are moving all around the screen, so with that extra bit of resolution you can see that far more clearly, so it actually kind of impacts your experience in terms of gameplay there. So that's an interesting thing to consider. Maybe they kind of waited on Pikmin 4 for this time, which is a long time to sort of wait, but maybe at one point they're like, you know what, we need to sort of fine-tune this for a 4K experience. Maybe. And maybe
my original thinking for why it got delayed was that they were going to remake it in Unreal Engine 4.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they did.
Because
maybe
it was never
you know what, we're gonna make it in Unreal Engine 4 because we want to show off the Switch.
They want to show off the fruit. because when I first played Pikmin 3 on the Wii, I was like, man, this is the best looking fruit I've ever seen in a video
that
game.
water, dude. The water is
The water
part
was
that holds
gorgeous,
up the
too.
best.
Yeah, the water looks incredible. I'm a huge Pikmin
now I'm
fan.
getting excited. I'm getting really excited about the premise of 4K
I think they could
Pikmin
really make
4.
Pikmin 4 look a lot better, because Pikmin 3,
Alright.
like the characters, the water, like they look great, and the monsters and stuff look really good, and the items that you collect look great, but the actual like environments are really, like the texture quality is really low, the polygon is like really not that, the polygon count's pretty low, and there's really not like a lot of different smaller details and bits and bobbles and things in the environment. It's just kind of like flat and more plain.
Yeah, the ground texture's always kind of, I don't want to say bothered me, but it was always something I noticed in Pikmin 3.
It's pretty bad.
Like compared to everything else in the game, yeah.
You can tell that there are still some remnants from the original Wii version of the game before it was moved to Wii U.
Right.
And I think some of the lower quality environments and the texture work might be part of that.
Yeah.
I think we're all on to something. Was that Birdman who suggested that?
I saw Joshua Ayers bring it up, and
Joshua Ayers.
Yeah. Birdman was talking about Pikmin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I think that's brilliant. I'd love to see that. Nice textures, maybe an improved lighting engine, just like some really cool lighting in a Pikmin game. That would be glorious.
I just want to point out that Pikmin 4 and 4K, like there's gotta be some sort of play with
Pikmin 4K.
That's it. You just call it Pikmin 4K. There you go. Like I just feel like you kind of have to do a play. Like it's just the kind of, it just makes perfect sense. It makes way too much sense. I could definitely see Pikmin 4 coming out, if not like as a surprise game at the end of this year, like definitely like a 2022 release like that I can kind of see happening. Yeah,
that'd be epic.
Every year I do a well, excluding last year because there was no E3, but I've been predicting Pikmin 4 every year for like the last 3 years.
Someday,
one of these days, it's gonna be right.
Only 3 years? I think me and Andre's been talking about it for the past like 7.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's been a while. Because I think like Anuma, not Anuma.
It's been like 4 or 5 years.
Miyamoto, sorry. Shigeru Miyamoto, I think, was talking about like Pikmin 4 at least
that it was almost finished,
like back in 2015.
Yeah. See,
they could have made Pikmin like we should be at Pikmin 6.
We should. Yeah, I guess I would have been guessing for a Pikmin 4 longer, and I gave up hope for a little while because the Wii U underperformed, so badly. Those Pikmin sales were not good on that console, and thankfully that game has gotten new life and become the best-selling in the series on the Switch, which is fantastic. But it's kind of the Switch's success that kind of kickstarted me into being like, oh, I think we're getting a Pikmin 4 now for sure. But it was those Wii U days that were like, man, like I know Miyamoto talked about this game almost being finished, but I don't know, maybe they're throwing in the towel on Pikmin. And I'm just really glad for the Switch success. Yes.
What are you doing, man? You're giving me hope. Because my eyes just shot up because your argument that, all right, so the Switch being more successful, that gives Nintendo more reason to invest in other projects, give them an opportunity to be successful, especially with what we've seen with sales.
Yeah.
It goes back to the argument that because of how healthy of an environment Switch is for sales of different series, you gotta think Nintendo should be more willing than ever to go back to some of their older franchises or underutilized IP. So the first that came to mind was F-Zero in 4K.
I was waiting.
Come on, man. Come on. That's the kind of game, like I'll settle for F-Zero GX 4K. I would settle for that. Just give it online, just clean up the visuals, put it in 4K, make sure it's still 60 FPS. Like I will take that. I'll give Nintendo $60 for that. Easy.
Well, here's the cool thing. According to Nintendo's president, Shintaro Furukawa, the Switch is about halfway through its life cycle. So we're
There's still
roughly
time.
getting anywhere between 3 to 4 years left of the Switch, unless like sales start taking a major dip. We're roughly getting 3 to 4 years. This is the perfect opportunity for Nintendo to really dive into some of those more obscure back catalog games that they haven't really gone big with in a while, especially because of the runaway success that basically everything that's coming out on this console is becoming.
Yeah.
It's insane. Any first party game that's coming out on this console is a hit. Paper Mario and the Origami King, that got a drop on Twitter, became the best-selling one in the series. It became the best-selling one with like mass critique of it not being kind of going back to its roots, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There's a lot
something
of
I
possibilities.
realized when, because you're talking about getting F-Zero GX in 4K, and I was like, that's not actually that crazy if you think about it, because you know we get games like, well, the fact that it's F-Zero, yes, but the fact that a remastered game in 4K is not crazy anymore. We've gained games like Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, now Skyward Sword HD, all in full 1080p, all using the full screen resolution of that console. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Switch Pro update for Skyward Sword 4K, and then you know if they were to release a F-Zero GX remastered, you know, you'd think on the Switch Pro that'd be in 4K. So it's really not like that crazy. The only thing is you gotta hope that one day they actually remaster, you know, F-Zero GX. But you know, one can hope, one can dream.
Yeah.
A Metroid Prime Trilogy HD? Well, no, Metroid Prime Trilogy 4K. That's what we're looking for.
See,
now.
that exactly.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that it kind of brings me to one more little point I want to kind of talk before we start talking about Pyra Mythra and Xenoblade 3. Because we didn't get a Metroid announcement during the February Direct, it does lead me to believe they're probably only getting one Metroid game this year, but as we talked about earlier, the rumor is the Mercury Steam developed Metroid 5 game. Sure. But with this Switch Pro in consideration, and with the looming Metroid Prime 4 and then the longer Prime Trilogy, you gotta think Nintendo has a bit of a plan here. Like, what if they're waiting to reveal anything Metroid because they want to announce it all together? Like, if you look at when Prime 4 was announced, what happened shortly afterwards? Samus Returns was announced, right? I think Nintendo sort of learned from the Federation Force backlash that if they're gonna announce one Metroid game, they probably should talk about the bigger project too. So, I feel like it makes sense that come this E3 time, I think we're going to get a Metroid announcement, but I think it's going to be more than one Metroid announcement. I think they're going to talk about multiple things, especially considering that Prime 4 is, let's assume very, very worst case scenario here. They started 100% from scratch, like even storyboarding, which I don't believe. But they started 100% from scratch January 2019. I think more likely they restarted like the actual development like late 2018, but still had some storyboarding over from the initial project because it's still the same producer, Kensuke Tanabe, and then they also had maybe somewhat of a proprietary engine, Retro Studio, so they had something to start from. But let's just assume worst case scenario, it all started January 2019. We're already past 2 years of that point. Yes, there was a pandemic in 2020, so that could delay things somewhat, but I feel like the idea of us getting a Prime 4 teaser this summer isn't far-fetched at all. A lot of games can be made in 2 to 3 years. Metroid Prime was made in 2 years. So, you know, I'm not asking for them to have finished Prime 4 in 2.5 years. I'm asking for them to talk about, like, give us like a teaser of Metroid Prime 4 after 2.5 years with, and I think that's possible. I feel like it's more than just possible. I feel like it's actually, I'm almost willing to like make that as like a hard prediction. Like, I feel like we're gonna get a teaser for it. So, and they could save it. They could, like, they might be able to do it, but they might just choose to save it because maybe not the time. But if they're gonna have a Metroid game come out this year, they might as well talk about multiple Metroid games, get that Metroid train rolling. So what I can kind of see, to kind of finish my point here, Metroid 5 comes out this year, but maybe they also announce Prime Trilogy for maybe an early 2022 game, and just talk, or maybe it doesn't even have to be early 2022, just like a 2022 release, and they talk about how it's gonna take advantage of the 4K capabilities of the Switch Plus, and then they give us a teaser, a very short teaser for Prime 4, and say that its development is going well. That's all I'm asking for. It's a lot, but I think it's conceivable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible. I think at the same time, it's also very possible that they just go, here, we're giving you 2D Metroid, but don't worry, we're also giving you 3D Metroid with Prime Trilogy. And then, I know you guys really want to hear more about Metroid Prime 4, but we're going to talk about that at a later time. And they're just going to have to wait.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that too, for sure.
I don't think it's as bad a situation as it was before, because at least we know Prime 4 is like in development.
Yeah.
And especially if they talk about Prime Trilogy, then we are still getting some form of Prime game instead of just 2D Zelda. And Prime Trilogy's, it's not a new Prime game, but it's still something that people have been looking forward to a ton.
Yeah.
So
I think that makes
get away
sense.
with that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that makes
Wait
sense.
Wait a little bit and tease it next year.
Talking about 3 different Metroid games is a lot.
Yeah.
If it's a Metroid Direct, no. But who would expect to see a Metroid Direct?
God.
Right?
My big hope is that they don't do this. There's a lot of people upset or worried, like, hey, Nintendo forgot about Zelda's anniversary. Like, what's the deal? I think we're getting some Zelda anniversary information definitely this year. They don't always announce stuff at anniversary time. So
the anniversary is at a pretty weird location, being in
February. So I think that's still coming. So my big hope is that they don't do a Zelda anniversary direct and at the end and go, a couple other games that have anniversaries this year are Metroid and Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
So be sure to celebrate that. I hope that those get at least some sort of acknowledgement, more so than just hey, these games have anniversaries too.
Yeah, I think the Mario 35th Anniversary Direct was more something Nintendo came up with because of the pandemic situation. I think under normal circumstances, it probably would have been shoved into a E3 style Direct potentially.
Yeah, definitely.
So my perspective is that this summer we're gonna get a Zelda focused Nintendo Direct. That's what when they make those announcements we're gonna do this and we're gonna talk about that. I think they're gonna
there's other stuff in there, but that's the focus,
right? So they're gonna say, tune in on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Or 12 p.m. Pacific time for I got my times reversed, but they tune in for this time to see a 50-minute Nintendo Direct presentation where we'll discuss a number of games for the year, including the Legend of Zelda franchise or something like that. So games from the Legend of Zelda franchise. But in there, it leaves room to talk about other things beyond celebrating Zelda's anniversary. A new Donkey Kong game, like a new Metroid game.
Yeah. Nintendo was also extremely silent on the anniversary. They didn't even do a special Zelda tweet, which definitely tells me that it's because they're going to be talking about it at a later time. That's not a sign to be upset. People are what? They went completely silent. They didn't even mention it.
They talked about
to me
Paper Mario's anniversary and Fire Emblem's anniversary. There's no way they just skip Zelda. I mentioned just
say anything on Twitter.
No, exactly.
That's the crazy part. They say anything on social media.
It's a really good point. I think it is indicative that they have bigger plans.
I mean, we were talking about it before when we were predicting what will happen. We were I think the craziest thing would be if they just said nothing. But that's what they did. They just said nothing. At least they announced some things for Zelda. They just didn't tie it to the 35th anniversary.
Right. Go on.
Oh, go ahead, Andres. Oh, I was just gonna say we all agreed that if they don't talk about it at the anniversary, they'll probably talk about it at a later time. That it's not going to be they just never mention it.
No, there's no way.
Yeah.
I just want to give some pushback. But Brandon, you kind of went back and agreed. They made multiple Zelda announcements during the February Nintendo Direct. I've said it repeatedly. There was 4 announcements technically: Age of Calamity DLC, Skyward Sword HD, Skyward Sword and Skyward Sword Joy-Cons, the special Joy-Cons, right? And confirmation that there will be details for Breath of the Wild 2. Like, that's technically 4 Zelda announcements. Technically, Zelda had way more of a presence than any other franchise in the February Nintendo Direct. Did they actually make a reference to the 35th anniversary? No. But they talked more about Zelda than any other franchise close, and they were right next to the anniversary. I do feel like it is another indicator that there are more Zelda plans in the future. And I mentioned this before, I think you guys will agree with me. The fact that Skyward Sword HD is coming out in July and not being saved for later into the year, to me, suggests that they have another bigger Zelda game that they're waiting to release into the holidays. Some people have been suggesting that it'll just be like Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD, but given the Bloomberg report with the Switch Pro and how long in development Breath of the Wild 2 has been, and how you probably need something bigger
before Skyward Sword HD anyways,
but they haven't.
For after.
So yeah, I at this point I feel like it comes afterwards. Hard to say. They may not even be coming. They may save that for another time.
I'm saying they might be coming at a different year.
Yeah. Age of
I
Calamity.
wouldn't be surprised if those are the last ones to come. I wouldn't be surprised if Wind Waker and Twilight were the last games to join. Like, if they do have multiple Zelda releases planned, which I'm sure they do beyond just Skyward Sword HD. Those two would be the last, just because they're the most fresh, they're the most recent. I could see them bringing over some of the other titles first. I know there was there's people theorizing about some of the handheld games like Phantom Hourglass and stuff like that. But I could also see them bringing over Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D.
Yeah, I know there have been there have been trademarks for Phantom Hourglass, but I have a hard time seeing Nintendo putting Phantom Hourglass on the Switch eShop.
I know what they're gonna do. I made a video on this many years.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago. I don't remember. But I was talking about how they should remake and reimagine Phantom Hourglass. That's what they're doing. It's going to be Wind Waker style gameplay for Phantom Hourglass. It's going to be great, guys.
If they remade that game in the Wind Waker engine, I'd lose it.
It'd be amazing.
I'll be honest. Zelda's my favorite series of all time. I'm not a huge Phantom Hourglass fan. It's like that one's really low on my list of games. I actually like Spirit Tracks a lot more than Phantom Hourglass.
It's a lot more.
Phantom Hourglass had one thing that just bothered me. You replay that same dungeon over and over again.
It's a lot better in Phantom.
Because you get to start where you left off instead of
you don't have to play through the whole thing over and over again.
Yeah, you're literally playing through the same rooms dozens of times with a timer ticking down. So it just got really repetitive.
There are ways of going a lot faster, skipping a lot of rooms. There is an art to it, but it's not really explained to you. You just kind of have to figure it out. I found a shortcut. Randomly.
The game that would be a dream remake for me in the series, I think, would be Zelda 2, if Nintendo's going to pick a game. It's one of the more obscure games in the series. It's one that most people haven't finished. Most people have never played. Obviously, a lot diehard Zelda fans.
The gameplay's so different, though.
It's so different, though, but you think about what they did with those, that game had moments in it where it's, kind of that side-scrolling action game. I feel like it's one of those obscure games that they could give new life, and, it's weird and different, but I think it's still worth the love of a remake.
I could see it. I'm not saying that can't happen, but it would definitely be it wouldn't be I don't see it being a major Zelda release unless it's So, I mean, it kind of depends, right? For example, let's say Monolith has been developing a new Zelda, a Zelda spin-off or something, and it's basically a reimagining of Zelda 2, then I could see that, right? But that would require entirely new gameplay, right?
Sure.
I think Zelda 2, it's already on this Nintendo Online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
that's what I'm saying. If they ever bring that game back, that should be brought as a remake. We already have the original.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it would be a fun one to reimagine in a modern engine because it's such an obscure game.
Right. I
Not
mean,
that
it would be cool.
I'm not predicting that it's a likely thing for Nintendo to do. I just think it would be a really cool thing for them to do.
For sure. Yeah, and I also think Phantom Hourglass, if you bring that back, remake does make sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But let's well, there's a point here from Taker that I want to bring up, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Xenoblade and Pyra Mythra Smash stuff, and then we'll close out with more Q&A. So Taker610 added me. Commonwealth Realm made a great video on what Nintendo did for the 20th, 25th, and 30th anniversaries. This is in relation to Zelda, I'm assuming. They've all been later in the year and not in February. Early June, it has to be it. And, I think that is important to note. It isn't, again, if you look at how Zelda's anniversaries have been celebrated, it's towards the end of the year, not the beginning of the year. Now, the difference being is that was in the past, right? Lately, the way we've sort of seen Nintendo operate, they kind of acknowledge anniversaries when they're actually happening. But also, you could make the argument that 3D All-Stars, when it came out in September and the anniversary happening that time, was more of a happy accident because of the pandemic situation. There was a lot of speculation, discussion that it was meant to be talked about and shown off way sooner. So, yeah, I mean, that could very well be the case. It probably is the case at this point, given that we passed the anniversary. So, I think you're probably onto something there. But let's start talking about Pyra and Mythra and Smash Brothers. All right, there's two different sides to this, right? I want to talk about these characters and how fun they are, but I also want to talk about how I feel like Xenoblade 3 is kind of being hinted at here. I feel like because of what we've been talking about already, it makes sense to talk about Xenoblade 3 first, because it kind of ties into that Switch Pro discussion, and then we'll talk about Pyra and Mythra. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that sort of direction?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the whole Xenoblade 3 thing. 1, Xenoblade 2 came out in 2017. Okay. They had the Tour of the Golden Country DLC come out in 2018. And then in 2020, we had Definitive Edition come out for Xenoblade 1. And that's pretty much it for Monolith Soft. But we know Monolith Soft is one of Nintendo's biggest developers. They have several different studios. They've helped out with multiple different Nintendo projects, including Breath of the Wild. And they were hiring for multiple big projects back in 2017. We have yet to see the fruits of those efforts. So, we're in 2021 now. Basically, they haven't come out with a ground-up major new game since 2017. You gotta think that they have at least one project that's close to getting an announcement, and which sort of leads to kind of that promotional campaign leading to its release. I think we're close to that, just based off those facts alone. But going beyond that, we recently got news from the Xenoblade composer. I don't remember his name. Let's see here. The Xenoblade series, I'm reading this article here. The Xenoblade series is one of the many JRPG fans have championed, blah, 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 blah. Yes, the composer Yasunori Mitsuda. He's apparently working on a big project that's starting in April. A big recording project. There's even some things blurred out, so it's like under NDA. There's this picture here. I'll show you guys. You see the blurred out part right here on the right side. These are all like musical sheets. But here there's some imagery potentially suggesting what it may be for. So this guy who's worked on the Xenoblade series and other big musical projects, including Smash Brothers, is working on something huge. And he's recording in April. I hope I got the name right, because there's multiple names there. Yep, yeah. Yasunori Mitsuda. So there's that people are sort of thinking, oh, is this perhaps recording for a new Monolith Soft game? Considering that's what he kind of does. There's definitely,
I'd say probably so.
Maybe, yeah. So you got the timing of just Monolith Soft development, right? You got a Xenoblade composer working on a big new project. So those two things I think kind of bode well for this, right? But there is more, actually, because as we've been alluding to, Pyra Mythra have come out, and there's been a lot of celebration of Xenoblade 2 lately. Have you guys noticed that? Like, Monolith put out this little video of Pyra and Mythra in first person to show, like, kind of throwing out the note. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I actually don't.
Okay, let me see if I can find that real quick. Monolith. I didn't pull it up. Give me a second here. Cameron, did you see it?
I think I know what you're talking about, but I'll let you know when you pull it up just to be sure.
Let me see if this comes up. Yep, I found it. Alright, so here, I'm gonna put it up for you guys. Alright, let me kind of press play here. So, they made this little video. It's in Japanese. Monolith made this.
Oh yes, yeah, I did see this one.
Yeah, so it's really cool that they made that for this. But another interesting thing... Oh, let me get out of here. Another interesting thing is that when you watch the Sakurai Presents where he's talking about Pyra Mythra, I've seen, most of the Sakurai Presents, and I've seen all of them, but he does talk about each series that for the different DLC characters for that Presents. But Cameron, you watched it as well, and tell me if you agree. He talked a lot about Xenoblade 2 itself. Like, there's a lot of Xenoblade 2 gameplay. He continually was praising and pushing more attention to Xenoblade 2. I would say more so than he has for other games for their respective characters in Sakurai Presents. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Lots of times in those presentations, he'll do like, little bits of gaming history. He'll throw little fun facts at you or jokes about the series. But they showed a lot of Xenoblade 2 gameplay. Like they kept cutting back to the original game throughout this. So yeah, I definitely think he was making he was going above and beyond and making Xenoblade references.
Yeah, and that could
the whole reveal trailer for Pyra is essentially built around a lot of different cutscenes from Xenoblade 2, like way out of context.
Well, on that note, actually, in the Sakurai Presents, Sakurai said that Monolith actually made that. That was the first Smash reveal that was not made by the Smash team. It was made by Monolith.
Yeah, they made it in it's in engine. It's all in
right.
The game. They just made new cutscenes without Pyra in.
It's funny because I haven't had a chance to really talk to you guys since the Smash announcement, but I was live streaming and I was like, oh my gosh, Andres is going to lose his mind when he sees this. I was saying in the live stream, but I legit thought it was DLC. At first I was like, Smash Brothers? But then it was so story heavy that I was like, wait, is this Xenoblade 2 DLC?
That was my exact thinking. Yeah, at first I was like...
Which is really cool.
I saw the clouds and I was like, oh, Xenoblade, Rex and Pyra and Smash, it's happened. Like the first couple seconds, but then as it continued on, it was like, Rex is like looking for Pyra and is building this narrative. I also transitioned my thinking, like, wait, is this Smash? This isn't a very Smash-like trailer. This feels maybe like a Xenoblade 2.5 or maybe Xenoblade 3, right?
Yeah.
And then it was nope. They pulled it's like they made us think one thing, then they made us think another thing. It's like nope, it is Smash Brothers. Here you go. But it was so unique, and Monolith made that trailer. It wasn't. Yeah, to your point, Brandon. It was in game. It's a very unique thing. It's the longest Smash trailer reveal, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So I just want to say this: Pyra and Mythra being in Smash Brothers, to me, is like that. To me, it's like the finale of Smash Bros. For me, because it's like every character that I could have possibly wanted in this game is in it. Everyone. And what's so special about Pyra Mythra is that, sure, Rex isn't a part of the moveset, but Rex actually has a decent amount of presence here, because he's in both of their taunts. He is in both of their final smashes. He does the attack for the final smash. So if you play with Smash Meter, Rex is still part of the moveset, technically. He is in their intros. When they jump in, he's there at the very beginning. and he's in multiples of their victory screens. So Rex has more of a presence with these characters than any other side character for any other character in Smash Brothers. So, and he actually in the presents, they did talk about how initially they were trying to get Rex to work kind of like as a companion character with them, but he talked about the whole Ice Climber situation, how even with Ice Climbers there's far more simplistic designs that really pushes the system. So because of those reasons, they had to kind of shy away from that gameplay mechanic and just focus on Pyra Mythra. And we'll talk a little bit more about their gameplay, but I just want to say that, like, it's just so exciting. I'm just so happy with this. I've been playing with the characters so much. A lot of people are saying it too. It's not just me. Like, a lot of like big Smash competitive players are saying that these characters might be the best characters in the game. Like, there's something special here with these characters. There's a lot of love and attention put in here, and I think Sakurai just is a fan of Xenoblade too. Like, we knew that going in.
Oh yeah.
And you can make the argument. Yeah, exactly. You can make the argument the reason there's so much attention here is just because there's a lot of love for this game, and fortunately, Xenoblade 2 is getting a nice surge in sales right now because of Smash Brothers. But it kind of brings me back to the point, though. All of this Xenoblade 2 love, what it's doing is creating a lot more awareness for the franchise. This extended trailer, right? This unique extended trailer made by Monolith Soft, this independent video from Monolith Soft, the huge focus on talking about Xenoblade 2 during this presents. When you consider all of that, and you consider that there is actually a history of Smash Brothers teasing other games. Look at Luigi for Luigi's Mansion 3 when they showed the Castlevania characters. They've done this before. And we consider the other things, the composer working on a big new project, the timing of when we should see the next big game. I think Xenoblade 3 is probably not that far off. Now, there is another piece to this that I haven't been able to confirm yet because I didn't want to spoil myself, but I haven't finished Future Connected yet. I was trying to finish it today, but there was this one side quest with a giant blue dragon that I couldn't kill, so I had to go into casual mode. I hate that I had to do this because I want to finish the game tonight so I can record this idea, but I'm going to finish the game tonight probably. And there have been some theories that Future Connected might be suggesting some things about the future for Xenoblade. I don't know. I haven't finished the game yet. But there's all these different things that I think are supporting this idea that a new Monosoft game could be right around the corner. And we know for a fact Xenoblade's not done. They're going to continue the Xenoblade series.
Oh, yeah.
Could be Xenoblade 3. And with all of this new popularity for Xenoblade 2, it could go over really well in terms of pushing even greater sales for Xenoblade 3.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that it's pretty possible that we could see that new IP, that new medieval project that they're working on first. Just because we know that they started working on that like right after Torna was done.
Sure.
So it seems like that was the next project they went into, and maybe they're working on Xenoblade 3 as well. They could have two different development teams working on both of those games. But I do think that the medieval game seems like it might come out first. I'm not gonna lie. But I do think some sort of Monosoft game is around the corner.
Do you guys think it's possible that the medieval game is Xenoblade Chronicles 3? I know the Xenoblade games have kind of, you know,
it's not impossible, right? Like, they could.
I'm pretty sure they said that it was like a new project for them.
Yeah, I think they suggested it'd be like a bit of a rebrand for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious because I know like the themes there are some similarities with the themes of the Xenoblade Chronicles games, but they are quite different still. It would be interesting for them to make a Xenoblade game that's like super heavily rooted in kind of fantasy, with a little bit less sci-fi.
So I think most people sort of interpreted the hiring to mean new IP, but like to your idea, like if the Xenoblade 3 was set in the past for another area that had a very fantasy medieval environment, like they could do that. That wouldn't be against the Xenoblade necessarily.
Right.
However, the Xenoblade series does have a lot of technology in it, but it's kind of intermingled with old world fantasy as well. So if it was set in a fantasy medieval world, they would eventually unearth like giant, powerful god
yeah.
mechs or something. Like that is a part of Xenoblade.
Zelda.
Yeah, well, I mean, that Zelda does have ancient technology as well, so there is
Yeah.
a lot of similarities there. On top of that, the Monolith team helps out with Zelda development, so there's a lot of like kind of crossover there.
Yeah.
But the impression is that project was not for Xenoblade.
Right.
But
No,
you know,
it seems to be something separate.
yeah.
So when the way they have their hires on their page set up, it's like an entirely different segment. They have like Xenoblade hires, and then they have hires for Zelda project, which I assume is like Breath of the Wild because it says officially Zelda. So they wouldn't. Why would they say they're working on a Zelda project they haven't announced? Probably Breath of the Wild. And then they have this third other project, which is what we're talking about. So it definitely seems separate.
I'm so curious what Monolith's involvement is in Breath of the Wild 2, because we know that they assisted in designing the open world.
Right.
We know that we're going to be revisiting that same Hyrule. Now, it's a big question of whether or not we're going to be, exploring new areas underground or possibly in the sky as we see the castle raise up, or maybe we go to we get a dark world version of it. It's all up in the air. We just don't know enough to know exactly what's going on. But I imagine there's got to be some good new locations for Monolith to have a large involvement again, since they are using that same world.
Well, to your point, actually, if we look at the Xenoblade games, Monolith Soft clearly has demonstrated a great capacity to make giant, open, fantasy, sci-fi worlds that have incredibly diverse environments, a lot of very interesting topography, like variations in like elevation with mountains and hills and dips and holes, but they also have a lot of floating islands and land masses. They there's a lot of, it goes against gravity, but they do that, right? But also they did work on Skyward Sword as well, not just Breath of the Wild. So going to your point about how in Breath of the Wild 2 there could be a lot of work underground, a lot of things there, but also things in the sky as well, which could also sort of see all these things sort of kind of layer on top of each other, because Nintendo has been sort of marketing Skyward Sword HD as well, and making those references to how there was a lot of ideas taken from Skyward Sword into Breath of the Wild 2, Breath of the Wild 1, but also with Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess, there are when those games were coming out, they made mention how some ideas from those are carrying over into Breath of the Wild as well. So you understand my point here, though. Monolith Soft works with the Zelda team. They have demonstrated the capacity to make big, diverse worlds that have floating land masses. And we see Skyward Sword HD and how Nintendo's comparing that to Breath of the Wild, and how that may be perhaps an indication that they could be looking at that game and sort of considering how they made that, and perhaps reconsidering that so they could perhaps execute some ideas in Breath of the Wild 2 really well, like how they handle sky areas. So, I think there's some consideration here that perhaps Monolith Soft could be helping out with things like that, for sure.
I'll tell you what, man. If we get like Sky Islands in Breath of the Wild 2, I will be beyond stoked. It was super exciting with Skyward Sword, but the game's also, it's very linear. There's not really that much to explore. Like the islands are like super small. It felt like almost like a really downscaled version of what you were able to do in Wind Waker, which, like, there are small islands in Wind Waker, but it just felt more like there was a lot more to discover. If they got help from Monolith Soft to create something a little bit more grand and like full of discovery in the sky, that'd be so cool.
I mean, we see the castle at the end of Breath of the Wild 2 rising from the ground. That is objectively true. It's not like some people debated. It is rising. It doesn't rise. We don't know how much is rising by, right?
Very true. We have no idea.
But conceivably, it could just go straight into the sky, and there's a lot of exploration into the sky. Maybe, Link somehow needs to get to the sky, and he doesn't know how. So a lot of the game is built around finding a way up there, right? Maybe the castle's in space. So
they almost did Aliens, so you never know.
Idea. What it is this time around. Well, it's tricky how they'll handle the design of Breath of the Wild 2, because in Breath of the Wild 1, you could go to the end of the very at the very beginning of the game.
Right.
Maybe
I was just thinking about that.
like, will they do it the same way?
I imagine no. I think they're gonna focus more on story in this game, and there'll be a few little things that were neat about Breath of the Wild 1 that won't necessarily be true for the sequel, like being able to fight the very last boss at the beginning, because I mean, a lot of us are wondering, like, hey, what if Ganondorf has some kind of, like, evolution throughout the series? Well, then that means that he's not going to be the same as he will be when you fight him for the final boss. Which means maybe they'll do a thing where, depending on when you fight him, it's, like, a different form, but I doubt that. I imagine you just won't really be able to fight him until the end of the story.
Maybe the game will be about finding a way to get back to the castle. So what if the castle goes high up into the sky, so high up into the sky that it's basically space? Right, like one of the last like layers of the atmosphere, you know, and the game's about finding a way back up there, and what you have to do is explore ancient temples underground Hyrule and a few in the sky, and as you build up, you can kind of find ways to get closer and closer up there, but you can't quite make it until you go to all the necessary temples and dungeons and get the power-ups you need, and then you can finally get to the end.
The ancient loft wing and fly up to the castle, kick Ganon's ass.
Or
yep.
No, loft wings what you would unlock so you could explore different sky areas, but there would have to be like an ancient dragon that can go to space. So basically Link would have to find Rayquaza. It's a space dragon in Pokemon. Yeah.
I think you're onto something.
I honestly I feel like that's not crazy. Like
no. Well, it's funny. You look at some of those. If you guys are familiar with a lot of those concept art images that are in the Creating the Champion book,
a lot of alien stuff.
A lot of alien, and they did have plans for like alien invasions in Hyrule, which is super weird. But Nintendo has a tendency to grab old ideas that didn't make it into the previous iterations of the game and kind of reinvent them. I'm sure one of those big ideas that'll be in this game is Link had that. Arm that was like upgradable and turned into like it showed like the hammer where your hand's like a hammer and different gadgets like hookshot gadget. I have a feeling that idea is gonna make a return in this. We see in the trailer Link reaching up and the magic swirl, so I'm sure that's gonna make it. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those creepy, because this game looks a lot darker, some of those creepy versions of the Guardians make it into this game at some caliber, and that seems like something that Monolith Soft would really excel at, doing some of those very alien-like creatures. You see some of the creature design that they have in the Xenoblade games is remarkable, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But we're talking about Zelda right now.
Yeah, sorry.
Love Zelda. But let's go a little bit back to the Xenoblade stuff. But I guess we kind of agree that Monolith Soft probably has some kind of game that's near completion, right? You both seem to kind of agree with that. I think there's a chance it could be Xenoblade related based off everything I mentioned. But, I mean, who's to say that it can't be a new IP, and simply the name drop of Monolith Soft, considering all the Xenoblade 2 love they've been getting, and you know, it's all sort of together, that could still be marketing for this new IP, right? Like, you know, Monolith Soft is mentioned during the Sakurai Presents. People know that Monolith Soft are behind Xenoblade. So all the Xenoblade love could still create improved sales for a new IP from Monolith Soft. It doesn't have to be Xenoblade 3. I feel like Xenoblade 3 would probably transition a little bit better because of that, but still, I feel like it still helps. So, you know, like during the trailer, they could be like, oh, from the makers of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 1, right? Like, and then people know. You know, I think that's a possibility. They could still be a new IP for sure. So whatever it is, I do think that there is an announcement looming from them, 100%. But between the composer, all the Xenoblade 2 love with Smash Brothers and such, and just the fact that have been working on multiple projects since 2017, something's coming for sure. And considering the whole Switch Plus potentially coming out by the end of the year, right? Nintendo's gonna need some bigger, graphically intensive kind of games to showcase this system. We talked about Bayonetta 3 earlier, obviously Breath of the Wild 2. Another kind of developer from Nintendo that puts out those kind of games is Monolith Soft. So if it's either a Xenoblade 3 or a new IP, that would bode really well for this system.
Well, I mean, if it comes out even this holiday, that'll be like a year and a half more development time than Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got. So
yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was quick. They pumped out some gold pretty fast, actually, with that one. That's really impressive. Yeah, I think if we don't see whatever Monolith is working on this year, we're going to see what they're working on definitely in the first half of next year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're too far off. Like, even if we somehow don't get an announcement of it this year, I think by E3 of next year we get an announcement. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. But let's talk a little bit about Pyra and Mythra themselves. Have you got any chance to play with Pyra and Mythra yet, Cameron?
I've been super busy, just a little bit. I've actually been really deep into Bravely Default 2.
Yeah, my roommate's been playing it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
How is it?
I love it. I love that game so much.
It's getting really good review scores.
If you guys love traditional JRPGs, definitely check this game out. It's fun.
Should I play Bravely Default 2 now, or should I play Octopath Traveler first? And they're not really connected story-wise, so...
No, they're not connected at all. Ah, man, that's a hard one.
I'm about to finish Future Connected. I need something else to play.
I think I like Bravely Default 2 more than Octopath.
Already?
Default 2 has like proper story, which Octopath doesn't have.
Yeah, Bravely Default has the tendency, they did this with the first two games, Bravely Default and Bravely Second, where the story feels very traditional, like your standard kind of cliched JRPG story.
Sure.
And then it turns everything on its head, and kind of like shocks you late in the game, in a really cool way. The game is very grindy, but because of the combat system, you could have like fast forwarded speed during combat, as well as if you're fighting enemies just to train and grind levels, you can just brave, which lets you attack a bunch of times with each character. So what I do is I'll go out and train for a while, and I'll pop on like Andres Restart podcast or something, and like enjoy myself and level up some characters. But
nice.
While you're playing Bravely Default 2, watch the podcast.
There you go, guys. Yeah. But yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's a great traditional style JRPG with a great combat system, fun story, some beautiful artwork, great music, and a lot of really cool job classes for your characters to experience. So,
all right, fine, you sold me. I'm gonna buy Bravely Default 2, maybe even tonight.
Hell yeah!
So yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
but Pyra Mythra, I've played a little bit with, and they're extremely fun characters. I think they're fantastic. Really fun movesets, and my favorite thing about this is that I feel like for a lot of people, the hype around the announcement was rather low. I mean, if you're a Xenoblade fan, this was a huge hype announcement, but for a lot of people, it's like, oh, whatever. But the cool thing is, the people who weren't hyped about this announcement are actually loving the character and like, wow, this character.
Now the characters
awesome.
Come out, like,
yeah,
exactly. I think that's, again, it's kind of turning more people towards Pyra Mythra and Xenoblade 2, because Sakurai is really pushing this. If Sakurai respects this franchise, you should too. Like people respect Sakurai, and I think there has been a little bit of a debate over the last couple of years regarding Xenoblade 2, and a lot of people don't really respect it too much because, well, there is there's the elephant in the room of the game being overly sexualized. Personally, that sort of thing doesn't bother me. I think it's fine, but
it's very blushy crushy.
Yeah.
In Xenoblade,
I wouldn't even say it's that bad. Like, for an anime style standard, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I think some people might be turned off by the anime style, because I think a lot of people who got into Xenoblade 1, it wasn't blatantly anime-like. So for a lot of people that saw Xenoblade 2 and they saw how they transitioned to more of an anime style, that bothered a lot of Xenoblade fans. And then also when we look at Definitive Edition, they changed around the character designs to be more anime-like, which bothered some Xenoblade fans. Like, clearly Monolith Soft is transitioning to more of an anime-like look, which works really well for Fire Emblem, by the way. And I personally am fine with that. I mean, anime is becoming progressively more and more mainstream. It's a big deal. It's a big part of our culture. If you're not into anime, I think you should give it a try. I'll recommend a few good animes that you should definitely watch. Attack on Titan might be like the best thing to watch ever. Like, we're talking about Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad quality. It's that good. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood's another really good one. So there's a couple right there that I think if you hate anime, watch those. If you hate anime after watching those, then all right, you're just not into it, because those are like some of the best anime series out there.
So good.
I love that you suggested Brotherhood instead of like the original.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
I think
don't watch. Yeah, it has to have Brotherhood in it. If you don't watch it with Brotherhood, it's wrong.
Yes, Brotherhood is the superior version.
Let me explain why.
Sure.
The reason why is because Brotherhood's actually what the writer envisioned for the story. The original Full Metal Alchemist strays way off of that. It doesn't really have that same structure. It's a different story. It's not told really well. Brotherhood is like now it's more than just a director's cut. It's like, this is the story. This is what it was intended. Watch that. That's like the real deal. But going back to games, right? Xenoblade 2 is a really big deal, I think. And I think it's getting a lot of love here. And people, just Pyra Mythra are really good, fun characters. What's really interesting about them, even though they weren't able to fully execute the whole blade driver combo, because it wouldn't have worked on Switch, because putting in Rex in there with those the complicated designs wouldn't have worked out. Like, the transition between Pyra and Mythra seamlessly yields tons and tons of potential. We're really just scratching the surface here, because Pyra is a heavy, slow character, but hits ridiculously hard. I think her forward smash might be the best forward smash in the game. Like, it has such incredible range. It's explosive. It does obscene amounts of damage. But she's still balanced, though, because she's kind of slow, right? She doesn't have great recovery options, things of that nature. But she can switch to Mythra lightning fast. The down B actually can be used as a dodge. Like, that's how good the down B is. You switch instantly, and you can actually theoretically like have combos where you switch in the middle of the combo to do other things. And I've been playing around with the character. Mythra, like I said, is a really fast character. Like, you can use Mythra to kind of get around, and you rack up some damage, but in the middle of your attack, you just switch to Pyra for a sort of a different situation. Their specials do different things. Like, Pyra's side B shoots out her blade, which is like probably the best range attack between the two different characters. So sometimes, basically, there's a lot of different circumstances where you want to sort of switch to Pyra or Mythra. You could theoretically play as just one, but Sakurai's talking about in the presents, he hopes that people sort of experiment kind of using both at the same time, because there's a lot of potential there, and it's something that they didn't really execute well with Zelda and Sheik when they used to be one character, because the transition was slower, and perhaps their movesets weren't as like complementary of each other. Like, with Pyra and Mythra, there's just a lot of potential there. Like, that switching mechanic and having entirely two different like special movesets and just speed, it changes a lot.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you're meant to switch between the characters in Xenoblade as well, so it kind of makes sense that they flow into each other like that. That's true. So they still kind of carry some of that Xenoblade gameplay with their switching mechanic. That's a good point.
Yeah. The cool thing too is, like, when it comes to Smash Brothers and a new fighter, it's so much more than just adding a new character to the roster. There's so much love and attention to detail, and I feel like that's especially so with Pyra and Mythra, because we've got these, like, basically these two characters that are like so fantastically executed in the game, with multiple finishers and multiple victory screens. The new stage is gorgeous, and it, to me, feels like it's pulled right out of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I feel like I'm in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when I play. It's unbelievable.
The cloud bro. The cloud sea. So, Brandy, I think you may not have been able to like see this yet, but they actually have some interesting cloud physics going on with the cloud sea, because you can fall off stage, and when you come back out, like, the clouds sort of like plume up.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I
It's a
remember
nice little
the
touch.
cloud system in the actual Xenoblade Chronicles 2 game was like a very unique system that Monolith made for that game.
Yeah, I've
So,
never seen
it's kinda
clouds
cool.
quite like that before. Because I mean, usually in games you don't
Like
you're not in
volumetric.
clouds. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how they sort of conveyed it in the stage. It's a very nice little effect. It's different. It's not the same
very
as
cool.
Xenoblade 2, but
No, I'd
it's-
imagine it wouldn't
yeah.
be the same, considering they're going for 1080p 60 for Smash.
Yeah,
'cause
but it is
a lot of volumetric stuff can be really expensive.
It's still cool.
It's just gorgeous, and it really immerses you into that world, seeing like the different titans flying by and Gramps like looking over. And they did this really cool thing
Super
in the Sakurai presentation where they showed like different angles, perspectives of the arena that you never get to see when you actually play the game, to see kind of
Yeah.
all the detail that goes into creating these. And I'm always blown away about the amount of detail that goes into each character reveal, from the stage, the music, to the character and the moves and all that stuff. And this one, it was like a double hit KO of just tribute to great characters from a great game. So I love it. I couldn't be happier with the results of what we got.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to transition a little bit to the chat here. I do think they kind of bring up some interesting points that are semi-relevant to what we're talking about here. Ronnie Fazio added me a little while ago. While I haven't played Xenoblade 2 yet, I like both Pyra Mythra's designs, and from what I've heard, are very deep characters. I don't understand the hate the designs get. I mean, it's because they're sexualized.
Yeah.
I mean, they are. So I'm not going to deny that. I mean, they are. I feel like
I do think Mythra's design, when they gave her that like black, what is it?
Yeah.
that they changed.
They gave her
Like
they gave
leggings.
her
They're
Yeah,
like
they gave her
black
leggings.
leggings.
Yeah, and that carried over to Smash, which I actually prefer. I like the leggings on her a lot more.
I mean, it creates a little bit more contrast. So yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I always felt like for Mythra, like she has a very strong personality. So to me, like her proportions were just kind of more for that. Pyra, on the other hand, is like a very doting, soft character. So it's a little different. But both the characters are kind of meant to kind of contrast each other.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, I recommend playing Xenoblade 2. Both characters are very fun to sort of get to know and learn about, especially if you play Torn of the Golden Country, because you learn a lot more about Mythra in that one.
Yeah, Torna's really good, just for story and lore in general.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of the game.
Mm-hmm. Daniel Covert, have you played or watched Xenosaga? I have not played Xenosaga.
Nope.
I know that was sort of like Xenoblade 2 is kind of like Monolith used to make Xenosaga before they were part of Nintendo. So there is like arguably some connection there. I haven't had a chance to do
Xenogears
that.
as well.
Yeah, that as well. I would like to someday kind of give them a try, but
They
I
should
haven't.
port them to the Switch.
They really should. They're cool.
Nice
They're cool
little
games.
remaster.
That'd be a nice idea.
Xenosaga, the funny thing about those games is, yeah, it's like the old Metal Gear Solid days where, like, anytime a cinematic started, grab some popcorn because you're going to be watching, like, cinematics for, like, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes Xenoblade 2 has really long cinematics. That
Yeah.
go for like 20 minutes.
I enjoy that. So
I love it.
I love story in my games, so I am all about that. I know some people just like to skip through all the dialogue and get to the action, but
And an RPG,
I love
like
getting
Xenoblade,
immersed in the world.
It depends.
Xenoblade has
for
some
me.
of the best storytelling, just in general. In gaming.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes when I'm playing a game, I'm kind of annoyed by cutscenes. But it depends on the game. Like, if a game kind of manages to make me feel immersed and I want to learn more about the world and the cutscenes are fun, like, then it gets me in. But there's oftentimes when I play games and I see cutscenes, I'm just not at all. I don't really care about the story, and I just want to skip it so I can play the game. It happens with a lot of games, actually. But Xenoblade, on the other hand, it's fine. What did I do, Brandon?
The only time I would do that is maybe even. Nah, I still even if I was playing the Call of Duty, I would never skip a cutscene.
I'm not saying I skipped the cutscenes. I say I want to skip the cutscenes. Like, I just wanted to finish. Like, I'll still give it its chance. But what's gonna happen is that if it doesn't keep me engaged, I'm just gonna stop playing the game.
I
is my
thought
point.
you were just saying you just skip the
No,
cutscenes
no,
in some
no.
games.
No,
There's
not
sometimes
that.
I'm watching YouTube like just people playing games, and they'll skip through the cutscenes or skip through the dialogue. I'm like, oh, why?
It's killing you inside.
You hurt me. And it's like, I don't even care, because, you know, I can play the game and figure that out. I'm just like, now I know that you don't know, which bothers me.
It's a weird thing to do in a JRPG, in my opinion.
It is.
I mean, if the story's awful,
They have good
and
stories.
you're like, I don't care about these characters, but, you know, I'll try and avoid a JRPG that I think is going to have a disastrous story.
RPGs in general.
Xenoblade is certainly not that.
They'll have good battle systems, but in the end of the day, it's ultimately fairly repetitive, you know? So you need like really good music and a really good story to pull you through that gameplay. Because just playing, like, as good as Xenoblade Chronicles 2 battle system is, I wouldn't play just for the battle system for, you know, 60 to 100 plus hours.
Or let me ask both of you guys this, because
No.
no. I really like the battle system in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I haven't played Torn of the Golden Country yet.
It's better.
I heard they refine it a lot. The UI to me, is not that great in the base game. It's very clustered. You've got stuff everywhere.
Yeah,
I heard they refine that.
Yeah.
Like, can you guys like give me an idea on like how different is it really? I'm just curious.
Brandon, I feel like you're the biggest.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've played.
Yeah, it's been a while for what if I remember. You only have one blade, but the driver fights a lot too.
Yeah.
So both the blade and the driver can switch between
essentially,
each other.
It's almost more like you have two drivers rather than having a driver and three blades. That's kind of how it feels. And you switch between them. So instead, and it's just the characters you get through the story. You don't like get blades through any kind of gotcha mechanic or anything like that, which I definitely prefer, because I feel like it makes the systems and like stats and things a lot, because, you know, there's a lot less variables, so they can
it's a little bit more
that feel a lot better.
Right.
It's not as overwhelming.
Yeah, and when you switch, my favorite part about the mechanic is it's kind of like fighting game. You know, like in a traditional fighting game, like I say Street Fighter, I think it works like that. You get damaged, but again, you have like a part of your health bar that is like extended a little bit past the actual health you have, which is like recoverable health. So you can like switch out, and that part of the health bar will like automatically fill up for your character. You know, they have that in Xenoblade Torna. So if you have a certain amount of damage that you can recover if you switch back to your other party members. So that's a big part of it, is trying to keep that in check and switching as you need to. And of course, you got the different arts for the different characters and stuff.
you still get orbs
It feels
around.
a lot more balanced and a lot more refined. And I think the fact that there's not just a bajillion different blades also makes it feel a lot more refined.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's interesting because oftentimes RPGs want to put in as many layers as possible so it can get very, very deep. I think RPG fans in general appreciate that, but I'll also say that there does get to a certain point where some of it can be a little overwhelming for me personally.
For sure.
For example, playing through Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I got to a point, well, maybe part of it was because it was a story I already knew, but I did get to a point where I was like, okay, I don't feel like every couple hours, because I got a whole bunch of gear from killing enemies, to sort of reassess every single like character I'm using and change around their piece of armor and gems and things of that nature, because it's just like
the gems
a lot of work.
The hardest part. It's like there's so many different types of stats, and there's so many different armor pieces you can put them on, and it's just it's too much. It's too much.
Now, I'll say that maybe what they should have done is, because there is a way to kind of like know which gems you had before and put them in, but it would have been nicer if every time you change an item, it just asks you, do you want to transfer over the gems? And if it doesn't fit, you pick which one you want to remove and maybe put it in a side pocket, so it's clear like, oh, this is a gem that I like using.
Save.
Yeah.
So like, sometimes I want to switch between armor for a different fight, but then I need to switch the gems because I need certain pieces of gem from this equipment and this one. What they should do is they should let you save different loadouts for each gear. So like when I switch to this, automatically pull from my other gear all these gems and put it on this, so I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like every time I switch to this gear, switch the gems. If I switch back, switch gems back.
Yeah. But let's is there anything else you guys want to sort of talk? We've kind of like gone
Yeah, we got way off.
Way off. I mean, it's fine, you know. But let's kind of get back to the chat here, guys. We are kind of reaching the end of the podcast. I have a flight in just a few hours, so you can put out your final points you want to bring up. It doesn't have to be about Xenoblade or Pyra Mythra and Smash. It can be about pretty much anything. But yeah, this is the last opportunity to put out those questions or just points you want us to talk about. Holly Sario added me. I'm interested in what is Kojima's director of Xeno X and the leader of Monolith Kyoto's team doing. Yeah, I would like to know as well. Javi Sario had a follow-up. I know there are 3 Monolith teams: Tokyo team with Takahashi, New Xeno game, Kyoto team with Kojima Medieval Project, and Okita team help with Breath of the Wild sequel. I was under the impression there was more than 3 teams, actually. Those other teams might just be meant for like general support for different departments, but
curious what their source is on these teams.
Yeah, I don't know what they're working on right now. I can't tell you. All I can really give you is kind of pretty much that there's a medieval project. Now, with the medieval project, we did see concept art that does seem very Zelda-esque. I did throw out the idea of, at least a few weeks ago, that maybe that they're working on some sort of Zelda spin-off, which I would still qualify as a new IP. Smash Bros. Is its own intellectual property, Mario Kart's its own intellectual property. Those started off as spin-offs as well. So, just saying, like, what if they're making a game in perhaps a more darker version of the Zelda world? There was that leak of Retro Studios initially having a project that was supposed to take place in like the Fallen Hero timeline for Zelda, and it was ultimately canned. I think we're going to play as Ashika, which would have been really interesting. So, you know, maybe Monolith Soft is working on some sort of new IP that's set in the Zelda universe. That'd be pretty cool. But, I mean, we'll see what happens. Let's see here. Let's see. Javier, no. Javier Vasquez. On just remembering the Skyloft exists. It does exist. Joshua Ayers. Maybe Monolith Soft help with Breath of the Wild 2 dungeons. The Skyward Sword dungeons were great. I was under the impression Monolith Soft mostly helped out with the environment, but I'm not sure, actually.
I'm not sure.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I feel like it makes more sense for them to help with the world design. It seems like the least of the Zelda team's concerns is dungeon design. They've had that.
Yeah, they're experts
you know,
at dungeon design.
Yeah, they've had that on lock since the NES.
Yeah.
So I think doing a massive open world was something that was really new to the team, and that's where the Monolith expertise really came into play.
For sure.
Yeah, let's see here. Ice Sonic added me. I hope for no first-party exclusive to Switch Pro. Third-party exclusives are more likely to happen, but first-party exclusive could happen for Switch Pro. What do you guys think? I don't think there will be first-party exclusives. At least not physical release games. Maybe there's a couple eShop things, conceivably, but I don't see that. I think what we're looking at are just like, well, 4K optimized games. Like, games will get patches and things of that nature. Could they do like an F-Zero GX 4K and it's only available on that? Yeah, but considering that the mobile version of this Switch Plus is gonna have a 720p screen, that means that if they were to have exclusive games be running on this piece of hardware, there's going to be a 720p version available no matter what, right? So, I mean, technically there are games that can only be in portable mode or docked mode, but they're like, there's less than a handful or something. I just don't think that that's going to happen We are hearing rumors that some third-party exclusives, but I do think it's going to be a pretty minimal amount, because how many developers are just going to not utilize that huge install base of the current Switch models? I don't see anyone ignoring 80+ million systems, especially when on the Switch people buy way more games than other pieces of hardware. The install rate, that install ratio, right, is way larger on Switch than pretty much any other system we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Not just Nintendo, like across the board. People buy games on Switch. That's what it's for. So that 80 million actually goes a longer ways than previous 80 million sold systems. I have a hard time believing there's going to be a lot of exclusives even for third parties. Some, sure, just because they may not be able to get it running on the base Switch at all, and they just want to at least have something there. But I think it's going to be a pretty rare thing.
Yeah, I especially can't imagine Nintendo ever putting like some of those back catalog games, like if they decide to go for a new F-Zero or do another Star Fox game or Earthbound or whatever.
Those
one of their
franchises need
like
the whole install base.
Yeah, to like put something that isn't really tested, they hasn't sold the greatest in the past, they don't know if it will sell well today, kind of like cutting off that huge install base seems like a suicide move for those IP.
Yeah, I mean, you could look, there's another perspective to consider though, that because they're not as popular, you're not going to piss off as many people, right? So like,
Sure.
Like for example, back on the new 3DS when it had first come out, they had made a bit of a Xenoblade port for the new 3DS. It was an exclusive, and at the time Xenoblade wasn't that popular, right? So there wasn't that much backlash because not that many people were like, "Oh man, I won't be able to play Xenoblade," right? But
there's still general backlash just on the idea itself.
Yeah, there was some backlash, but imagine if it was like a new Zelda game instead, right? Or like, what if they had ported over Wind Waker to new 3DS? Like, how many people would have been like upset that wasn't available on base 3DS, right? So I think there's that perspective to consider, but I think Nintendo sort of learned from that situation. I think because of what they did do, it didn't go over really well with the fan base. I think this time around, we don't have to really worry about that too much, especially because now, like, Nintendo's already developing with multiple sort of, like, graphical, like, sets in mind, right?
Settings?
Yeah, with multiple graphical settings in mind, thank you, because there's handheld mode and there's docked mode, so they already have that kind of perspective with their development. I feel like they're just going to have that moving forward. That's just the way things are going to be moving forward.
I think Sony and Microsoft already set the precedent with their mid-gen refreshers not having any exclusive games. I think it'd be kind of whack if Nintendo had exclusive games for their mid-gen refresh.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Xbox, exactly. Microsoft and Sony didn't do it. Nintendo would look really bad if they did.
Yeah. I don't think it would be a good idea at all. It's even weird that they did it. Like, it wasn't many titles on the 3DS, but there were a few. That was even kind of weird to me, just because Nintendo tries to reach as broad of an audience as possible and be as inclusive as possible. So that was a little bit strange, but
I think the idea behind
I'm not worried about it.
The idea behind it, I think, was more to get this.
Run on the original.
Yeah, but I think the idea behind it was just to get more people to buy the new 3DS.
Yeah.
And there was obviously more limitations with the 3DS than there is with the Switch too.
Yeah.
Like, they obviously threw that little nub on the new 3DS because there were games that came out on it, like Kid Icarus or Resident Evil Revelations, that just, like, if you didn't have that, it was just awful to control, and that wasn't even ideal. So I think the Switch has less limitations.
Something I think we might end up seeing late into the Switch's life cycle for certain games.
A boat?
Is something we actually saw. Yes, a boat. It's something we saw with 3DS, and on the original base 3DS, if you play Smash Brothers and you try to leave the game, you have to restart your entire 3DS. you can't just go back to the home screen. And the reason it's doing that, from what I understand, is because there's typically like a CPU core and RAM and stuff that's dedicated for the OS so that
Yeah.
you can quickly switch between them.
Sure.
But Smash was such a demanding game on the 3DS hardware, they had to use all of that for the game.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if towards the end of the Switch's life cycle, those dedicated OS, there'll be the option for certain third parties. Because I doubt Nintendo will need it, but certain third parties might give the option to use those dedicated cores for their games. It'd actually be cool to let. It'd be cool to let the people, the consumers decide. Like if they have like a mode in your game, like a turbo mode, where it turns off being able to switch. It's a little less convenient. You can't switch between the home menu and the game is without restarting it, but you get a little bit extra performance. You get a little bit extra resolution. It'd be kind of nice.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. That's it. It would be interesting to see that as an option. I probably wouldn't go for it that much. I like being able to switch pretty easily, but I wouldn't complain with it as an option. So, I see here Visible Broken Anatomy. Do you think that we are more likely to get a Breath of the Wild 2 trailer blowout before or after Skyward Sword HD? So I've been thinking that we get a June presentation of a Nintendo Direct, and in there they will detail Breath of the Wild 2 a lot, and then probably have a blowout with Treehouse footage after that. And so, because I think it's happening in June, yes, I think it'll be before Skyward Sword HD comes out. So my thinking has been this. So we know that we're getting Age of Calamity DLC, I believe, in June, and Skyward Sword HD is coming out in July. The second wave of the Age of Calamity DLC is coming out in November, I think, around then. But point is, Age of Calamity DLC comes out in June. So what I'm thinking is that we're going to get a Direct that's going to focus on Zelda stuff. Other things will be mentioned, maybe the Donkey Kong game, maybe a Fire Emblem remake, maybe a Mario Party game, maybe Metroid, right? Some cool stuff. Maybe that Monolith game we've been talking about. And then they transition to Zelda stuff. And for the Zelda stuff, they talk about Skyward Sword HD again. They use this as one more opportunity to sort of highlight the game, maybe talk about some features we don't know about yet. So it keeps the game fresh in the minds of gamers, so they can go ahead and play and buy it next month. So it would be another opportunity to actually market Skyward Sword HD, where there's a lot more eyes paying attention. And then also with the Age of Calamity DLC, they actually give us footage of what it's going to be, because in the February Direct, they showed us no footage. They just said, oh yeah, there's DLC coming.
There's going to be new characters, new maps. No
Sure.
idea what they are, but it's going to be there.
Exactly. So they do that.
Please buy it now.
Well, what they'll do, I think, they'll just shadow drop, right? They'll announce it during the Direct, and they'll say, oh, it's going to be available later today. And then after all that, then they start talking Breath of the Wild 2, and then they have Treehouse footage. That's what I'm sort of thinking. So yes, I think Breath of the Wild 2 needs before Skyward Sword HD comes out.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. June's what I'm predicting as well, E3 time.
Yeah. I guess some people are thinking that we won't learn anything about Breath of the Wild 2 until afterwards, but I don't think that's necessary. Nintendo talked about multiple Mario games at the same time for 3D All-Stars, so I think it's fine.
I don't
They're
think
very different games too, so that's the thing.
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand with, I think Breath of the Wild 2 is a holiday game this year, and I can't imagine them showing the game just once before the game releases. I feel like we got to see it at least twice. We got to see it with gameplay, see some of the new mechanics, what makes this one different from the first game, as well as that big release date trailer. Nintendo going to want to market the hell out of this game. It's going to be a flagship title.
I will say, we know less about the sequel. If it comes out this holiday, we'll know less of it at this point in development than we did for Breath of the Wild.
Yep.
Because we had that big January trailer. Or no, we had that... No, yeah, we still wouldn't have known. We would have known more. We were seeing more at this point, right?
Well, I mean, it was different because the thing is, for Breath of the Wild, there was that E3 blowout, and then the game was delayed again And it came out in March. But it was initially planned for the holidays, so I think that's worth noting. So, the premise of a blowout for this game at E3 and then coming out holiday is not crazy, because at one point Nintendo planned it for the initial Breath of the Wild, but they delayed it, but that was also surrounding the whole release of the Nintendo Switch itself. And the Wii U was not worth, it wasn't worth making sure you had a strong lineup for at that time. So it's not crazy to think that. But if we're just kind of going back to that point before that E3 blowout, we had seen 1, 2, 3. We had seen at least three times we had seen something of the game. Now they were all like very minimal, but it was still something.
It was 3 things. The first thing was that really cool teaser trailer where Eiji Aonuma was sitting and the field was behind him.
Yeah.
And then he disappeared and did that cool thing with Link being chased by the Guardian. And then the times we saw it after that was like at the Game Awards, where it was kind of like that early, I want to say alpha footage of just Link jumping off and like showing off the glider and running around and him being like, oh, the opponent doesn't run into trees. And then we got that big trailer for E3, and then we got that big...
Before the E3 trailer, there was one more little thing where they had like the Link with a hood and running in a green field with a horse.
That's true,
It was like 10
2016 just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we got the 2 big trailers. We got the one that showed off like tons of gameplay, a little bit of story beats, and then we got the release date trailer that showed a lot of story beats. It was like super dramatic, revealed like kind of like the voice acting and all that big stuff. So I think we're gonna get something similar. We already got the teaser out of the way. I think we have at least 2 big trailers.
And actually, I remember. I'm glad you brought that up, because for that January presentation where they showed everything off for the Nintendo Switch, including Breath of the Wild, I remember waiting because we still didn't know about the release date. We still had no idea about the release date. There was this fear that we would have to wait even longer. And I was like, oh, come on, please just announce it to come out the same day as the Switch. And they were like, March 3rd. I was so happy when they made that announcement.
That's what I'm saying. I predicted it earlier tonight. We're gonna get that direct that shows off the Switch Pro, Switch Plus, whatever, and then they're gonna do the release date trailer for Breath of the Wild 2. Right after. But one more thing before we go. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I got an inkling.
Maybe
my uncle works at Nintendo, so
yeah, maybe
they'll show off the release date. So
let's see here. Birdman added me. For the Switch Pro, I think it'll be a heavily modified Tegra X1 Plus, but they could use a Tegra Xavier chip or the new Tegra Orin. I
saw that comment, and it doesn't make much sense. So the Tegra X, he mentions 3 separate chips as the same, or different options for this chip. The Tegra X1 Plus, which is literally just the chip they use now, it has a different code name. It has a separate code name, but it's also called the Tegra X1 Plus. That's what they use in the current Switch. They mention Xavier, which is the next generation chip from them. It's not a gaming chip, but I guess they mean sort of using that same architecture. Because the Tegra X1 Plus is the Tegra X2.
He says I don't know.
Yeah, so they got that weird roadmap. So they got the Tegra X1. That's what's in the original Switch. Then the X2, which is not even what's in the Switch. It's like based off that, but it's not the same thing. And then they have the Xavier as the next generation, and then the Orion is the next generation after that. So, I don't know. The comment doesn't make much sense.
I don't know what they're going to do with chips, but I know it's going to maybe be more powerful, maybe have DLSS 2.0. So, we'll see. Let's see here. Moving on with the chat. Birdman, man, I want to play the version of Breath of the Wild that we saw in the Game Awards 2016, or was it 2015? I believe 2015. Yeah, 2015. Game Awards 2015 is when we... Well, there was a gameplay demo of Breath of the Wild at Game Awards 2016, but that was basically what the game was. We just didn't get that much footage of it. It was...
2014 was the year that they had the gameplay demo at the Game Awards. I remember it being the same year they showed the game off originally.
Good question. I'm not sure.
And you could tell, like, that was at 2015. That was like super early footage. You could tell.
Let me go do a quick search here. Game Awards. Breath of the. At the time, it was just Zelda U.
Are you talking about when Miyamoto and Eiji Aonuma
Yeah,
are
we're
like
sitting
sitting
down.
in chairs with the gamepad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2014.
Pretty sure that was 2014.
December 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it was such a long
I remember that
time
led me
ago.
into such a false sense of security on that release date, on that 2015 release date. I was like, man, they're already showing it again.
Wow.
This is
2
definitely
years and
coming
4
out
months-
next year.
2 years and 4 months later, it came out. That's crazy.
Jesus.
That's so insane.
Yeah. Wow. It is interesting when we see games very early on in development and we see how it changes, right? You're always curious about that initial game. I remember the initial trailer for Twilight Princess before we knew what that was. That I kind of want to play the initial game because there's a lot of footage that was shown that we didn't get to actually play in the actual game. Like,
Yeah,
I remember
that shot with all the bokoblins, like that army of bokoblins coming over the hill
Yeah.
and stuff.
it was
so
an
cool.
epic
You know,
trailer.
speaking of original versions game we haven't gotten to play, something we never talked about, but it happened, is the Dinosaur Planet game. That
Oh,
version
yeah.
of the game, the original N64 build for Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube.
And it
You
had
can
Star Fox
play
in it.
now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, it does.
yeah.
But it's
I haven't-
very,
I haven't-
very different.
I've seen
from the
some footage of
original
it, but I haven't
version.
played it myself. It's interesting because, like, the
It is,
beginning
like,
of the
the best
game
looking
is
N64 game
very
ever.
similar. I mean, it's just kind of interesting seeing the N64 version and looking at how it sort of got improved graphically in Star Fox Adventures. I'm actually kind of
Yeah.
impressed at how good it looked for the N64.
Oh yeah, I watched Digital
Yeah.
Foundries. They made an episode today, and they were showing the differences, and I was like,
I should check that out.
man, this looks really good on GameCube, but dang, that's impressive what they did for the N64. Like, that's gotta be one of the best looking N64 games. It runs like trash, but I mean, it's an N64 game, so
Yeah.
15 to 20 FPS isn't too odd.
I actually
Yeah,
understand
it's
why
just
they made the decision to switch to Star Fox, though, because they had this interesting new game. And I guess you could have said it could have been a new IP, but, like, they were using a fox. Like, a fox that looked a lot like Star Fox.
I
So
think they were actually using a wolf initially,
okay.
but similar, yeah.
It was a very similar looking character. So if Miyamoto stepping and saying just switch it to Star Fox, like, give it that name recognition, it does, I would assume, would have helped its sales. I'm not bothered by it. I think what bothered people about it, though, is that it wasn't like a actual Star Fox game. So that's where kind of the issues were. But now here's the thing about that, though, right? Because if you look at the early footage, like, they still had like that Star Fox style gameplay where you fly around and shoot things, right? They should have done more of that in Star Fox Adventures. Which is another interesting thing. Like, maybe that was they were already playing around with that idea, and that's probably maybe another reason why they thought maybe we should just make it a Star Fox game. They should have had more of that in the game.
The original version of the game. I mean, obviously, it wasn't fully Star Fox then.
Yeah, maybe
but
they
it
were
didn't
adding
have,
that
and
in
it didn't have
afterwards.
any of the R-wing sections or flying sections at all.
Yeah, but there was the flying on the dinosaur shooting like beams. It was Star Fox style
yeah.
gameplay, just not on an R-wing. It was a pterodactyl instead or something.
Well, they have that in the game, but yeah, they didn't do very much with it. I think the only time you actually fly is like the very intro of the game. You fly on a dinosaur as Crystal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just
but
feel
yeah, they
like
should have used
they-
it more.
they had it in the beginning. Why wasn't that there more of that in the game? It just wasn't. Like, I know that
I don't
in-
even think that segment exists in the original version.
Maybe you're right. Maybe they had added that because they already knew that they were going to make it into a Star Fox game. That could be the case. So it could have been just like a little thing they threw in there to make it feel more Star Fox-like.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
It's the whole beginning of the game, and like the hub is completely different. Like that initial hub world section with like the giant, like giant stone man,
Mm-hmm.
and the shop and all that. Like that doesn't exist in the original. That
Interesting.
stone man still exists, but he's in a completely different area.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to watch that Digital Foundry video on it.
It's cool how they show you how they did the grass and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nice looking.
Yeah, I want to take a look.
They got that like 3D like fur shader grass. It looks really nice.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to a few more questions here in the chat before we call it a night. Freddy68 asks, Andre, what was your first Zelda game you played? My first Zelda game was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Same.
Yeah. It was
mine was
magical.
Mine was actually The Legend of Zelda on the NES, hand-me-down NES
Nice.
when I was a kid, and I used to play that. I love the original game so much because that was the experience that turned me into the Nintendo fan that I am today, as well as what made me a Zelda fan that I am. My favorite series of all time. Now it's nowhere near my favorite in the series, but that was my gateway to gaming and Zelda.
I remember for Ocarina of Time, we put that game in, like we had all the lights off, and you just see this horse riding along the hill with the moon in the background. You hear the galloping and the music. It was so engrossing to me, like especially because I was a little kid at the time. Like seeing that, I was just like, this is an epic, magical world, and I want to be a part of it. And that was my first experience of Zelda.
No song that hits me harder than the opening title theme for Ocarina of Time.
It's a beautiful one, and I think it's awesome that you guys had that game for your first Zelda experience. What an introduction to the series. So cool.
Oh
yeah. I see a super chat from Taker610, and Taker actually has a question for you, Cameron. Taker says, Gamebird, is Bravely Default 2 kind of like a SNES JRPG like Final Fantasy 3? I'm assuming FF3 is for Final Fantasy 3.
Yeah, definitely. Just the combat system is super unique. The Brave default lets you basically block for a turn with each character to store up battle points, and then Braving is basically spending your battle points to attack multiple times with a character. So you can go all out and just brave the crap out of an enemy with each character. But you got to be very strategic when you're especially in boss fights that can be really challenging.
Right. They have a mechanic similar, and I haven't played Bravely Default 2, or any of the Bravely Default games, so I wanted you to tell me like how similar it is. But I've been told that in Octopath, you know how they have those little like crystal things you can save up, and then you can do like a really, really powerful attack. I assume it's like similar to that, but you do like multiple attacks instead of just like powering up your attack.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's interesting because, like, in this game, if you're fighting a boss, and let's say, like, there's 3 of your party is downed, but your healer's still up, and you have battle points, you could spam, spam and do 3 raises and a Cura, or and just raise everyone and heal everyone up a decent amount and stand a fighting chance to fully come back. So it's not game over as long as you play your cards right. And it's very much the type of game where I think when you first start off, you feel a little overpowered fighting normal enemies and just spamming it. But you quickly realize that you have to be careful with what you do, because just a small tweak in your gameplay can mean life and death, I guess. So it's cool.
Sweet.
A boss that feels impossible could feel easy with some changes to how you brave and default. It's pretty cool.
Okay. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like, depending on how well you use a chain attack in Xenoblade 1, like you can either do like millions of damage or you just suck. So that there are those like key mechanics in RPGs that can make a big difference. But there's another question here from Aaron Curdy. Favorite temple in Ocarina of Time? Yeah, well, this will be the last question of the night, and then we'll just close out. Favorite temple in Ocarina of Time? I haven't really thought about that lately.
I know mine if you want me to go first.
Sure.
Forest Temple for
Damn
me.
it.
Forest Temple.
I don't think I was going to say that too.
Really?
I think
It's so perfect.
Yeah,
it's
it
so
is.
perfect.
It really is. Because I was thinking, like, the first 3 dungeons are cool. Like especially I have a lot of nostalgia for the very first dungeon, the Deku Tree.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely not the best dungeon in the game.
It's very, very simple.
Yeah, you can beat it in, like, less than 10 minutes, easy. But Forest Temple has atmosphere like no other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it foreshadows your final introduces you to the mechanic of how you're going to be fighting Ganondorf at the end of the game.
Yeah.
As well as the mini bosses, the
man.
pose in the paintings, or the pose that teleport and disappear kind of foreshadow how you're going to fight Phantom Ganon coming in and out of the paintings and shooting him with the arrows. So it's just brilliantly designed. I love the way the corridor works, where you can flip the switch to twist the corridor and changes the layout of the rooms.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point, how it does sort of foreshadow future gameplay. To me, what was exciting, I mean, that's all exciting right there, but the music was kind of like very different. I've never heard anything like it. Like,
it's weird.
It's almost like someone's just saying like hit like in the background repeatedly, but it's like it's kind of spooky and mysterious, but not so much so that you're like absolutely terrified to be there. There is like some fear and anticipation, but you can still kind of, it's enough to where you can deal with it, is my point. But
right.
The other thing about this temple is that you get into this temple, it's like a deeper part of the woods that you had no idea existed beforehand, right? Because you don't go there. There's no reason for you to kind of find this. Like, you might accidentally find it when you're a kid, which is cool. Like, imagine like just accidentally finding it before the game tells you to go there. But when you find it, and then of course that's where Saria is at. But you see this place, like, how do I get in there, right? Especially if you do find as a kid, how do you get in there? Well, you have to use a hook shot. And then the whole quest to get the hook shot is just really spooky and cool, too. But it makes you wonder, like, how long has this place been here? It's in ruins. It's overgrown. What's the story behind this temple? And I think that's what kind of makes it even more exciting to me. Like, there's a story here, you know? And kind of figuring that out, wondering what it's about, exploring this spooky world that is foreshadowing your future fight with Ganon, or Ganondorf. It's very, very, very cool dungeon, for sure.
I would say Ocarina of Time, it has good dungeons, but I have to say it's not one of the stronger games in the series. I think they just got way better over time at making dungeons.
Yeah, it was the first game with 3D dungeons.
Yeah. So, like, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, I think all have better dungeons. But I gotta say, like, the Forest Temple still holds up. Like, I don't want to be the same one here for everybody, but I think the Forest Temple just is the best temple, just, like, almost objectively.
I think it's one of the best in the series. The other one in Ocarina of Time, Spirit Temple, just like some of the, it was the first time we got to play with, like, a really cool mirror shield mechanics and stuff, and using reflecting light. So.
I was gonna say I was gonna give second
place
to Spirit Temple.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's also the lead up, though, right? It's not just the temple itself; it's the lead up. Because technically, you play half the temple as a kid, right, or a chunk of it. That time travel element to it. Seeing that story, right? Because there's story behind this one as well. With not Urbosa. What was her name? Yunubo. The Gerudo Sage. I forgot her name. Is it Yunubo? No, Yunubo's not. No. I'm sorry, that's a Goron.
Shoot.
Gerudo Sage. Ocarina of Time. I forgot. Naburu. See? That's why I got confused.
Yeah,
Naburu. Naburu. Yeah, you see Naburu. You see what happens to her, and you see her story there, and then of course you wonder what happened to her, right? And then when you go into the future and you fight this Iron Knuckle, then all of a sudden you find her. Like there's a lot of interesting story there, and then of course you also the location of it is also really cool, because when you're a kid you can't really envision finding a place beyond. Like there are those gates, but there's no way to get past. So then you find this whole other area of desert, and you're like, whoa, I'm all the way out here away from the rest of Hyrule, and you find this hidden far off temple, which is really exciting. But then there's also kind of like you know that this is where Ganondorf is from, like this area, this province, and you also see the witches, and they raised him or helped train him. There's a connection there, and then you see what they transform into, and you're like, whoa, I didn't expect
that boss
this.
fight is so great too.
Yeah,
like I have such great memories of that boss fight.
Yeah,
so cool.
Really
it's
cool.
Hinted at that you'll be fighting them in the intro to the game. Like if you just wait on the title screen.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them as a kid, being like, who are these people and why? But actually finding them in the game was really cool. And I really like that aspect of the part of the game. It's not a dungeon, but it's kind of like a mini dungeon where you have to sneak around the Gerudo Fortress.
Yeah,
I really like that part of the game.
Yeah, the entire Gerudo area was a really great part to Ocarina of Time, for sure. So I would say I would put the Spirit Temple a second. I mean, it has a compelling case for first if you consider the entire sort of segment of the game between going to the past and stuff and the story behind it, for sure. But it's just the atmosphere of the Forest Temple and the overall gameplay. Like the Forest Temple does resonate with me the most, I would say. And you know what I would put third? I would put the Shadow Temple third. Like, it's very different than the other dungeons in the game, but it's also a very fun one. So it's like, all right, it gets third. I like the Fire Temple a lot because it has a fire dragon, a subterranean lava dragon.
Yeah, Volvagia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super cool, super cool. So I might put Fire Temple next. Water, I mean, I don't mind the Water Temple. The Water Temple has, like the best mini boss in the game, though, fighting Dark Link. So that does kind
Dark Link is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I didn't like the Water Temple on the original 64 version, and I love it on the 3DS version just because.
Not sure they changed.
Well, it's not serious. It's not anything that they changed in the temple. It's the fact that you can quick select items with the touchscreen.
You have to continually pause in the base.
Yes,
because of the Iron Boots.
I mean, you switch up to Iron Boots like 100 times in that temple. Like you said, Andres, you have to pause, put the Iron Boots in your item slot, then unpause, and then use the Iron Boots, and then if you need another item, you pull it. Like it was just a pain. People
always say that the Water Temple and Ocarina of Time sucks, and when I played the original version when I was younger, I wasn't very good at the game. So, and also I had issues getting my save files to start. So oftentimes I'd have to replay the same game from the start every single time. So I never got to the Water Temple, or I didn't get there very often. But I played it on the 3DS one, and it was fine. It wasn't that bad. It was actually one of the easier dungeons for me.
The only thing that was weak in the Water Temple, I think, was the final boss, Morpha, because you could stand in the corner. I don't know if you guys remember this. You could stand in the corner, and Morpha can't touch you, so you just hookshot whenever Morpha's close.
It was okay. I feel like all the other boss designs in the game were a lot cooler than that one.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, my thing is that I kind of like giant boss fights. So the Deku Tree had Goma, this giant parasitic creature spider thing. Then there's a giant Dodongo, right, for the second dungeon. Then there's this giant Baronade jellyfish monster thing. Then, I mean, the Forest Temple didn't have a giant boss, but he was still big and ominous. He was shadow. It was super cool. Phantom Ganon. Then subterranean lava dragon that wins. And then the amoeba thing was. The spirit, the bongo guy, Bongo was
Bongo's awesome.
Disappears, is giant and hands and is dead and alive. That was crazy. And then
it's so cool because you just see the hands in the beginning, boom, 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 and then you pull out the lens of truth for the first time, and you see this just horrific, like eyeball creature.
You're like, oh, I'm dead. This is terrifying. And then the witches were great, and then obviously the final boss of the game. That whole segment was awesome, absolutely awesome. The thing about Ocarina of Time is that most of the bosses were really cool. Most of the dungeons, like everything about the game, was great, and it started strong and it ended really strong. And that's kind of like one of the things that kind of holds me back from saying that Breath of the Wild is like the best Zelda game, because the end to Breath of the Wild to me was anticlimactic.
Mhm.
The penultimate boss is great, but that final boss is just way too easy. It was
Yeah.
way too easy.
For me, like Breath of the Wild's in my top 5 favorite Zelda games, but I probably wouldn't put it in my top 2 or top 3,
Mm.
only because while I love almost everything about that game, some of my favorite staples of the Zelda series are the dungeons and the unique bosses, and that was like the one big thing that Breath of the Wild lacked. I'm really crossing my fingers that now that they have the foundation for this game, they've got the physics engine
Yeah.
designed, they've got this big open world, that now that they can go in and make some really cool themed dungeons and some even cooler unique boss fights that don't feel like reskins, you know?
Yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of wanting that for Breath of the Wild too. I do think some of those things are a likelihood.
Yep.
So it's one of the reasons why I think Breath of the Wild 2 has the potential to actually be the best game of all time.
I agree.
Yeah, I think I hold Breath of the Wild in a little bit higher esteem than you.
Mhm.
It is, like, I mean, I like
Yeah.
a lot of the Zelda games, but Breath of the Wild is just kind of revolutionary. Like, I would definitely put Breath of the Wild above Skyward Sword. I would also put it
Same
above
here.
Twilight Princess, even though Twilight Princess is pretty darn awesome. I would also Wind Waker is strong. I would say the top
That's
4 Zeldas
that's
are
my
Ocarina of
number
Time,
one.
Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, and
Wind
Breath of
Waker
the
is my
Wild.
number 1, but only.
Yeah.
But Wind Waker is my favorite game because of nostalgia and things like that.
Yeah.
But if taking all of that away, I'd say probably for sure Breath of the Wild, because I think exploration is one of my favorite things in the Zelda series, and it just there's no better game that does. Period. Like that, there's not a game that exists that does exploration better than Breath of the Wild in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. My top 5, I'll just lay it down. My top 5, number 5 would be A Link to the Past for me. Number 4 would be Breath of the Wild. I'd put that in the number 4 spot. Number 3 would be Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, number 2, and then number 1's Wind Waker for me. Breath of the Wild, the two things that stop it could have easily been my number 1. The two things that hold it back for me is the lack of, or the three things that make it a little bit lower for me is the lack of traditional dungeons and unique boss fights, the breakable weapon system. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
And rain.
And like, the rain was dreadful. There's ways to fix these little things. If they made like upgrading the climbing gear void out rain making you slip while you climb, there'd be no problem with it. Like, there are workarounds for some of these things that I found annoying, but the breakable weapons, I just felt like I was in constant inventory management. I was scared to use my best stuff because I knew it was going to break and I felt like I might need it later, so I was always using my lower level
continuing
stuff.
with the idea, it's not even so much that I want them to get rid of those mechanics. It's, to your point, just give us more ways to kind of deal with those annoyances, right? So
repair system.
Yeah, or repair system, or maybe you can get additional training from a sword master or weapon master and with that additional training, what it does is it maybe does give you a few more fighting techniques, which you did need a little bit more fighting techniques. They need to improve the combat in Breath of the Wild. But also, maybe with that additional training, you are more efficient with how you use your weapons, so you can extend the durability of your weapons, but then also offer the option to repair your weapons as well.
Offer a blacksmith shop. You can go in. You can repair weapons. You can forge new weapons out of shards you get from enemies and chests. You can
level up.
You can level them up. Do them with different elements.
There's all kinds of stuff you could do. Different weapons have different perks as well.
Instead of just having a bunch of different fire swords I can find in the environment, now I've got 14 fire blades in my inventory. Make it a little bit less abundant. Make it like I found fire blade shards. I can take these to the blacksmith and
it was hard for me to
craft a sword.
It was hard for me to care about the weapons that I was getting because they essentially were consumables to an extent. And then the last thing for me, and this is just I know not everyone will agree, but the last thing that holds it back is a little bit of the story, mostly the main villain. I am not a huge fan of like the big just mindless force of nature.
Yes.
Like just like a natural disaster, apocalyptic force of nature. I like intelligent villains that are cunning. There's a little bit more of a personal story. I love like Wind Waker, for example. You know, Ganondorf steals your sister. You have multiple interactions with him. The same with Ocarina of Time,
He
where you're
wasn't
running
even
into
straight up
Ganondorf.
evil. Like,
Yeah, he wasn't
yeah.
even like they made him super gray and made him very where you can side with him on some points. But Ocarina of Time, you know, he's kind of intervening multiple times throughout your adventure, screwing things up, stuff like that. I love. I'm so excited that Ganondorf is coming back because it means we're getting an intelligent villain who's gonna have a more personal story with you. Like you messed his stuff up now, and he's gonna be pissed. So
actually,
like that has me excited.
Yeah. On that note, though, you're bringing up in terms of like a more personable antagonist, like Ganondorf, telling us more about this character. Birdman had an interesting question, which I definitely want to answer. I know I said the last question was Aaron's, and we veered off, but we like Zelda, so you always run that risk when you ask Zelda questions.
I know.
But Birdman added me. Do you think Ganondorf from Breath of the Wild 2 is the same Ganon all the way from Ocarina of Time or from the Downfall timeline? I mean, the Downfall timeline thing might throw some things into a wrench, but it absolutely is from Ocarina of Time. There's like no doubt in my mind at all. Because here's the thing. The Ganon from Wind Waker, the Ganondorf from Twilight Princess, the Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time are all the same person. That is canon. There is technically only one other Ganondorf in the entire series of Zelda, and that I believe is in Four Swords or Four Swords Adventures, one of them. It's the one that takes place after Twilight Princess, so I think it might be Four Swords Adventures if I'm not mistaken. And in there is a reincarnation of Ganondorf. However, in that game, there is still the spirit of Ganondorf from prior. So even in that game, there is an acknowledgement of the initial Ganondorf. So, Ganondorf basically, it's just one, but that one Four Swords game. So, I don't think that this Ganondorf is any other one. And not to mention, there's this clear wound in the chest, which I think is paying homage to Twilight Princess. It to me, it's the same one. Not to mention the legend, not even the legend, like what the explanation for Calamity Ganon is that this is the result of multiple failings by Ganondorf. So this mummified Ganondorf under Hyrule makes sense for it to be the same one that failed in the Wind Waker, that failed in Twilight Princess, that failed in Ocarina of Time. That also failed in the Downfall timelines as well, but he was Ganon in those. So I'm not entirely. We don't know where the game takes place in the timeline. My personal theory has been that it takes place so far into the timeline that the timelines sort of converge, or if not converge, they kind of, the events that happen kind of all become similar after a certain point. Is my point. Like it could still be three separate timelines, but if you go far down enough, they kind of eventually sort of become the same sort of set of events. They just sort of happen slightly differently. But either way, it's the same guy, 100%.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they even say in Calamity basically came about because he gave up on his human body.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
I wonder if after this sequel we'll finally understand exactly where in the timeline Breath of the Wild goes. Maybe.
I mean, it makes
waiting for the sequel.
Kind of makes sense for it to be Twilight Princess because of the whole how Ganondorf was defeated at the end of Twilight Princess with the wound in his chest. That's what this Breath of the Wild 2 seems to suggest from that trailer. I'm trying to remember the reasons why it isn't for Twilight Princess though.
I don't think there were any.
Well, there is one.
Ones. There was like he looked different. Like,
there was the Gerudo people had died out in Twilight Princess. Actually, supposedly, they had died out. So there's that. But Twilight Princess HD did have some of those stone monuments that showed Rito, which weren't supposed to exist in there. So that's an interesting little thing. It suggests that Rito do exist in the Twilight Princess world, even though it's a separate time from Wind Waker, where they supposedly evolved from Zora because of the seas. It could be the case that Rito would have eventually happened anyway, which kind of goes to my theory that regardless of which timeline you're in, these different things sort of occur eventually. I call it eventuality theory. So eventually Rito will occur regardless of the timeline. Like, that's just the natural progression of them. But there could still be Zora. They could simply be two separate species, but they sort of branched off into two separate species. And maybe Gerudo didn't actually die in Twilight Princess. They just weren't around and they thought they were extinct or something. I don't know. But there is a whole Arbiter's Grounds things, and there are no Gerudo there. There's no Gerudo civilization there, so it's strange. So it's hard to say for sure, but it could also be a retcon. We'll see. But yeah, drone the present the controller. Long answer. Quoted me. I will answer one more question. This will be the end. That was like 20 minutes ago. But yeah, we're done now. Oh, well, Nick Ortega had a question. Do you think they will go back to more of a traditional Zelda after Breath of the Wild 2? We kind of talked about that already. I think. Oh, after Breath of the Wild 2. No. I think
this one might be a little bit more traditional, quote unquote. I think they'll have a better, more focused story that's actually like linear, that like continues alongside as you play the game. Unlike the original, where everything happened beforehand. That seems pretty obvious. They might have dungeons, like actual more traditional dungeons and things like that. So I think they will incorporate some more traditional aspects. But it's not going to be... They're not going to make a traditional Zelda game again. Like, no.
The Breath of the Wild formula is the future of Zelda. But to your point, Brandon, I think, Cameron, we talked about it earlier, just bringing in some of the old Zelda tropes and making it fit within the Breath of the Wild style. That's what you're going to do. So I still think you have the traditional style dungeons, you still have the big epic boss fights, you still tell a good story, but you find a way to fit that all into the open air formula.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the future is of the two. I think the Breath of the Wild formula is going to be the strong foundation for Zelda for a while, but they need to bleed in some of those, like you said, some of those tropes that it's kind of that saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And dungeons are like, who do you know is like, I love Zelda, I just wish they'd get rid of dungeons. Like, you like never hear that. That's a staple that people love. So I think stuff like dungeons and like the more traditional unique bosses and bringing back some of those like tried and true items and some new really cool items into the mix is awesome. I think where Zelda for a lot of people was getting stale was within its world design, and its sense of discovery was starting to feel a bit dated, and that's really where Breath of the Wild really revolutionized open world game design, where you just had so much freedom and it was just so organic in the way you discovered things. Yeah,
for sure. But I think that is enough for now. I have a flight in less than about 6 hours. So yeah, I don't even know if I'm gonna sleep tonight. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out both these cool dudes' channels. They are linked in the description below. I'll try and have content ready for the week. I'm not sure I'll be able to, but I'll try. But yeah, that is all for now. You guys have any final thoughts?
Yeah, the awesome podcast. Excited for Switch Pro, Switch Plus, whatever. I think there's some good stuff there. I think it's definitely coming. And I hope you guys enjoy. I'm almost at 1,000 subs, guys, so check out my channel. And if you like it,
yeah, get this man to 1,000 subscribers. He's
so close.
There. Get him there, guys. For sure.
I'll just say, like, I just want them to talk about what the Switch Plus is. Just announce it already, please. I want to stop having to guess. Like, just please, I want to know. I need to know now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we're all dying a little inside.
We'll get the news when it comes. Someday. Yeah. But anyway, I see it's Joshua's birthday. Happy birthday, Joshua. Have a good one. But yeah, guys, that is all for now. Have a great night or day whenever you watch this. Leave a like, share the podcast, and we'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.